Understand we're in this room. I'm a very non-judgmental person, so don't be afraid to ask questions. I'll get into my introduction in a little bit, but we just want to make sure that you are all engaged, interacting. What you have in front of you, really some activities going to have you do throughout here. One of the things I used to hate in the corporate world is going to a 3-hour workshop in which someone just spoke for 3 hours. So we're not going to do that. We want to equip you, hopefully, so that you can start asking some questions when it comes to your budget. And I know this year's been a pretty difficult time with the budgeting years.
Jason, you just double check that, that I didn't turn it off by accident. I'm an accountant, I don't do.
Yeah, we look to be good.
Oh, good.
All right. All right, so our agenda today, we just picked out some of the basics. This is kind of a foundational workshop. One, we're going to go over budgeting and the board's role. Oftentimes, this is told to you by your administration, which is a flip-flop of how it really should go. So we want to make sure that you understand what your role is throughout the year when it comes to budgeting. The budget process, okay? One of the things I've found in my time doing this over the last 11 years or so, thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours researching this, really is that you may all do this different, right? When you think about it, one of the things I noticed through the last decade or so is superintendents MSSA, MSMA, MSBA are very much related, right? When you think about you and your position, they work together and they cooperate and they want to lobby legislation and get things through. Where's your voice, right? And how do you get that voice heard? Oversight calendar. Does this sound familiar? Oversight calendar, anybody? Okay. We're going to show you kind of what that looks like. Public transparency. One of the ironies, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, is when I was on the school board, I had a pretty good name in my district. I never wanted to be on a school board, but I answered the phone one day. There were 5 people running for 3 seats. I was hoping to come in 4th. Right? I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was very busy with what I was doing. And unbeknownst to me, people like the Hagans voted for me, and I got over 50% of the vote. So here I was, the leading vote getter. I go in with a mandate, find out what's happening under the hood. My administration at first invited me to the finance committee because they thought my name could help them have no problems with the budget. But I had a financial background. All right, now that's a story for another day, but just to give you an idea of where we are. And then we're going to give you a tool demo that I think you'll find pretty exciting. One of the things I realized, not only being on the school board, but kind of doing this for a number of years on the side as I was out in the corporate world, the tools and resources you have are limited for most people, right? So the mushroom example, I was smiling because that really resonates. So does that sound like a fair agenda? Yeah. All right. And then Q&A. We have some time at the end, but we also know lunch is right after us. So one of the things I learned very early in my career is never stand between people and lunch. So feel free to ask your questions throughout, right? We do have about a 3-hour workshop, including the demos. But if for some reason we're not making it through everything, we can always add that into another workshop or connect offline. So how about, why are Bob and I up here for you? So my name's Jason F. Sharp. I'm the co-founder of Dirigo Strategic Advisors. Much like Heidi talked about, we started in January when I left the software world. Some of my former roles show you a little bit of expertise I have. I was the Director of Strategic Enablement Data Analytics at Seismic, which is a software company out of California. And what my responsibility was end-to-end from an idea of a solution. They built solutions for corporations using AI and applications and what have you. But for me, it was how do you take their enablement platform and use large amounts of data and put it into a usable, actionable form, which people would understand how to then use the software to move their people forward. So when you think about if you're a Salesforce team or you're a service or what have you, how do you take all this information and put it into a usable format that someone could go out and actually utilize? So if I'm running a business, I need to know if my people are ready and how we're doing. And that was after I decided to retire from banking. So I was very fortunate. Hopefully I look younger than I am. And when I left, I was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Data Analytics. You can see why Seismic gave me a call. And when I did that, when I left Bank of America, I was supporting about 65,000 people. And really, from the time they get hired to the time they're rehired, making sure they had tools, resources to be able to do their job very effectively, but also probably even more importantly, was making sure all the executives had the tools and resources they needed to understand what the people that they were leading needed. Right, and so we had so when you think about dashboards, understanding what's happening and going from there. Most importantly for all of you, I used to be the chair of a finance committee. Right? How many of you have a finance committee? Okay, yeah, so I was the chair of the finance committee, so I get to see every single transaction that went through there. I had a few different views from our administration on how that role should go, but it was very interesting. Plus, I was also the building committee chair. We were doing some renovations. We had some big projects up there, and so someone that had lived in the area since the age of 4, I get to learn all about some pretty cool things when it comes to your capital planning, debt, all that good stuff, and how you plan for the future, strategic plans, and et cetera. So that's some of my background, what gets me here. One thing I want to say before I turn over to Bob is when I left Seismic back in January and got together with Bob to start this firm, my real goal was I'd been working with people globally for about a decade, and I felt like I was making a real impact in Australia, Germany, and London. I wanted to make an impact in my backyard. So I'm also a high school soccer coach, but I wanted to do a little bit more, and I figured over the last, in this stage of my life, I want to see how much of an impact I can make here in the area that I've really picked. It's education. I graduated in 1991 from Hammond Academy, and I have had a very privileged life because of the education I got early on in life. And my goal is to help all of you provide that same type of opportunity for the students that are coming through your, whether in pre-K or whether they're a senior in high school right now. I want to make sure that they all get that type of opportunity. So now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Bob. Thank you, thank you. I'm a recovering accountant. No, but yeah, I'm the accounting nerd, that's for sure. I was the director of finance at Eastern Maine Community College for about 7 years, quite a while ago. But again, an awful lot about budgeting, an awful lot about information and moving things around. I am a CPA, but worked for a small local company up in the Bangor Bucksport area called Foster Carpenter Black. I was there for about 6 years as well. And currently, I've got another firm called the CPA Solution. And again, what we do is we do forensic accounting, litigation support, expert witness testimony. That's my role, versus normal audits, which I'm assuming you folks are familiar with what an audit is. But what it isn't is the big thing, to be honest with you. And also, I am a professor at Thomas College. So I've been there about 6 years. So I kind of like the idea of not only being able to demonstrate what is going on and keep up with the current trends, but also put that in real practice. So I'm really excited about today. I think we're going to have a good time, and hopefully very interactive back and forth, because I think that's the key in order to make sure you get exactly what you need out of here. And so don't be shy. I don't think it's a shy crowd, but I could be wrong. But really walking right down through. And I'm also appointed to the Maine Board of Accountancy. That's a licensing body in the state of Maine. Again, just some credentials behind me. And now on with the show.
Yeah, so as you can see, between our finance background, our software background, and our accounting background, we've got a few ideas on what you all may find helpful to do your job. So first, we're going to go into budgeting and the board's role. When you think about this, this probably each district, it might be a little bit different. And I'm not really sure, but here are our learning objectives for this section. We want to describe the budget purpose and the structure of it. We're also going to explain the role in each stage of budget development. And some of you, your stages may be a little different than what we would think they should be. Align finance with student goals. Here's one of my passions. Our students are not getting the education that they need to survive. I just heard this last night from my daughter. She's a freshman at UNH. She did great during high school, took all sorts of AP courses, all that stuff. She asked a very pertinent question last night. All that work that I did through high school, why didn't it prepare me for my freshman year? Why didn't it prepare me for my freshman year? When I went to college, I heard that from the kids from Massachusetts. I felt very prepared when I went there, right? And so then when I think about it, when I think about our district, demographics vary widely, right? And so how do we make sure that every student has that? And one of the things I think happens in the world of, at least in my experience, education is one of those areas really hard to hold people accountable because you don't have the data. We want to bring that data to you. How do you tie your student performance into where your money should go? And how do you do that in an educated way? Right? We're going to show you that a little bit later. Know the major milestones, and then ask questions. So one thing that we will say, I'm a finance professional. Software type guy. I love AI. We'll talk about that a little bit later. He's an accountant. We're not here to give you legal advice. We're just here to kind of walk you through the process and what happens. We do have an attorney coming later. You can ask legal advice. So when it comes to finance, when it comes to performance management, when it comes to accounting, we are well equipped for those. So when we think about our learning objectives, first thing we want to do is why financial oversight matters. Our first question for all of you: why does financial oversight matter at a school board?
Because it's one of the biggest costs in the state and probably in your town.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah?
And performance sucks.
Yep. Yep. Does anybody think your budget is this?
Got it. Yeah, it's your values.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they hide the money for their little pet projects or their agenda under our noses, and we're not seeing how it's happening.
Yep, exactly. What was that?
I just backed that up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, speak right up.
That's what a lot of people think in the community as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when you think about it, when you look at it, if I were to read your district budget, and I've probably looked at some of yours, for some odd reason, I love to spend time on the Maine DOE site, and I look at some of these things. It's really interesting when I see how we staff our districts, right? When you think about it, and I'm not here to, I'm not a politician or anything, but I find it ironic that our administrative models are the same as when I graduated high school. Think about that for a second. Well, you have a superintendent, you have assistant superintendent, you probably have a bookkeeper, you may have a payroll coordinator, some of you might have a curriculum coordinator, right? You have an administrative assistant, maybe 2 administrative assistants, because those printers are just cranking, right? And when you think about it, then you might bring on some support folks and what have you. Your schools may have, all of them might have principals and assistant principals, and they might have an education activity coordinator, right? When you think about it, when I graduated high school, our district was made up of a superintendent, assistant superintendent, a business manager, a bookkeeper, a payroll coordinator, and administrative assistants. Do you need all those? So one of the things when you look at the budget as a moral document, you think about times changing, and you think about the role of artificial intelligence, you think about software and technology, being able to bring things to your fingertips, to be able to automate some of these processes. Now think about this. Why do all districts do their own payroll? It's your number one fixed cost, right? So if you're looking at it and you say, hey, I'm struggling, you mentioned your performance isn't great. So if you're struggling in elementary school, right, probably you need some data to kind of look at, like, why are you struggling there, but do you have the right people, right? Do you have the right people on the ground? So when you look at that, so when I see some of this, and we'll look at this a little bit later, it outlines your priorities, right? What are you spending your money on, right? Are you spending it where it should go? And one of the toughest things I know for myself, even with a finance background, when I was going through this, was trying to explain to the public something that I didn't have the information to explain. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that, right? When I was on the building committee, we'd do some things. It was really hard to kind of get out there. Ensure student success and fiscal health, right? So when you think about it, your budget also is designed to support your students. How many people here are familiar with the ED 279? Okay? What's the most important input? Number of students. What if do you all review that before it goes in? What if I fat finger the number of pre-K students you have? I put 51 instead of 71. Nobody catches it. It's about $170,000 loss to your district. Right? So when you think about it, you got to ensure that we have to ensure, and this is the role of the school board, we're building public trust, right? Can you imagine if the public trusted you to make the decisions that you need to make to move your schools forward? So these are the things that we're kind of looking at as far as why financial oversight matters. And then we want to go into some key concepts, a little bit of a cheat sheet we put together. The first term we're going to look at is the operating budget. So this is your FY revenue versus expense plan, right? So you have this. So this is, when we were in banking, we used to start off with a budget for the year. And we'd have our 11 plus 1, which means we're 1 month into the year. We're making adjustments for the next 11, our 10 plus 2, 9 plus 3. So when you think about your operating budget, it's not just a document people vote on in June, or some people in November. Some of us might be voting a little bit later than that. So this is your FY revenue and expense plan. Your fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. ED 279 is the subsidy calculation. So number of students is number one. What other item do we put in from our school districts that would be important here? Town valuation. Think about people. That's what it is. Staffing. What if I make a mistake when I put my staffing in? Right? Do they have the right information? MEFS, anybody heard of one of these? You have. All right. So this is the monthly, this is uploaded each month?
Quarterly.
You guys do it quarterly?
In the state of Maine, we do it
Okay.
quarterly.
So you have, you should be getting, if you have a finance committee or a board, a monthly financial from your districts. You have every right to have that. Right?
That's a state requirement that is, or is it?
The upload,
The upload to the state of financials is quarterly.
But it's, you're uploading the monthly?
it should come right out of whatever operating system you use for like your warrants and stuff like that. Some people might manually put, but there's a whole spreadsheet that there's information that has to be put into it. CFA. So when you think about you all are responsible for Title I funds, you're all responsible for grants, federal monies, stuff like that. This is one area that Bob has a lot of expertise in. But these are things that you probably want to have oversight, that you do have oversight over. It's kind of like the old Fleetwood Mac song. Whether you do it or you don't, you'd still have it. So whenever these are submitted, whether you looked at it or not, it's been approved by the board. Okay.
No.
Any of these look unfamiliar?
Can we talk about that one with federal funds?
Yeah.
I don't think the board ever approves that.
I wouldn't argue with you.
Because the superintendent gets the notice and tells us how it's set up to be spent, and that's how we spend it. I don't think the board has it. You guys know about it?
Bob, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, who's fiscally responsible for the funds?
The superintendent.
School it. Now, what? You're right, and they do, don't they?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But it's not true, because really it's the board's responsibility. Now, whether or not you've got it in the past or seen it, that's one issue. But knowing that is your responsibility. Each of those funds need to be spent in accordance with whatever that requirement, exactly, whatever that requirement is. And that's unquestionable. It just has to be done that way. You know, anything that isn't spent, of course, is a designated fund balance that goes into the next year, maybe, depending on what the rules are. But definitely the board should obviously have reporting out on that, because when it's all said and done, it drops back on the board responsibility. Because those are designated funds going to the school. They're not going to the superintendent, even though they may think so, but they really aren't going to the superintendent, they're going to the school.
I wouldn't argue with you. I would be surprised if most knew. When I was on the school board, I assumed when it came to the federal funds that were tracked and what have you, that the right things were happening with those. What shocked me is after I got off the school board, I started digging a little bit more, and I'm like, how do we, when we underspend on special education, do we know what we underspend on? Was it grants that we didn't spend? Was it an ed tech we didn't hire? Was it some federal funds that came in that just didn't make it to the right spot and now they're somewhere else? How did we account for those? I didn't know at the time, right? Because we never really even talked about it. That was an assumption of what was happening. And just like with you, we'd get a little report and say, here's what we have from da-da-da-da-da. You don't have to worry about it. It's complex, complicated. We got it all under control. Don't worry about it, right? But over here, I think I heard a comment earlier, and I'm not saying this is happening, but hiding money, right? So if we don't have a clear understanding of what's happening with these funds, we're still the ones responsible for it, right?
Because they're part of the overall budget, they're your total number. So if we're carving out pieces of that number and you're not seeing where they're going, how do you know what else you're missing? You know, if you don't see the total.
What about any surplus from previous year's budget?
What type of surplus?
Operating surplus.
You mean designated or undesignated? Right, exactly.
I don't know. I know that we have in our district projected surplus of X amount of dollars. And from the questions I've asked on the school board, it's are we applying those funds to the next year's budget or not? And their response is that any surplus we can only apply 1/3
Did,
Struck me very odd that
Yeah.
that would be the case.
did you ask why we have one?
Well, they couldn't tell me what it was, or if we did in
Yeah.
fact have one yet,
It-
but.
Isn't that sad? Yeah, yeah. So, again, not legal advice, not legal advice, but understanding how you're moving through, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, how you're moving through on a regular basis, you would have known you were either going to be underspent or overspent or the cut. Absolutely, absolutely, because the data is there. That doesn't mean you're getting it or anybody else is getting it, but it's there. And that's one of the biggest problems. I'm hearing one of the biggest problems, because surprises like that should not be a surprise.
Well, not if you're doing, 6 plus 6 and 9 plus 3, whatever.
There you go.
It should never be the case,
Correct.
but it
Correct.
consistently is.
Yep. Question for that is, and we'll get into this a little bit later, this goes back to here, quarterly, uploaded state, or what have you. The reason I go with monthly, that's what I've always worked on, is a monthly, right? And you go through that, great question to ask. Okay, so, and we'll talk about the timing of this later, but, okay, so we have a projected surplus. What's the impact on our students?
Well, one of the potential impacts is they're not getting the resources they need to have in the class.
Exactly right. Perfect. So what would be the next question to ask?
Why?
Exactly. What did we budget for that we have not done that's accounting for the surplus?
Most of the time, is they can't hire enough ATEX or bus drivers.
Yep.
Or those kinds of things.
Okay.
Personnel usually they can't hire.
Yep, we hear that all the time.
Over budgeting.
Over budgeting yet? Now, when you think about it, when you look at going forward, right, and you think about it, and we're going to talk about the cycle of the budget. When you think about it, if we're starting to realize that we have a surplus, I got to tell you what, as a finance guy, I'm looking for someplace else to use it. Right, and if I know that, and I'm not assuming all your districts in the same spot, but I can't imagine that we can plow enough into our early education. Right, if you, go ahead.
They're taking the surplus and they're putting it against the following year's budget. So the budget expenses are going up and it's hidden with the surplus from the prior year. In our district, that's how it's done.
So they say. I'll share a story with it. Yeah, if you look at, and this is something that's also uploaded, yeah?
A report that I did.
Yeah,
This is like how much,
Yeah.
the school year and how much the budget is, what
Yeah.
they actually spent and what they had left over.
yeah, so let me ask you a question. Did they actually take the surplus from the year before and put it towards the budget?
What they're doing is they might be giving us $1 million or 1.5, and then they designate at the budget meeting, they want to spend it on this, so everyone raises their hand and they spend it where they want.
Right, but if you had 1.5 surplus, and we can take this offline, but if you have a 1.5 surplus in the next year that you put towards your budget, and the next year you have a surplus of 2.1,
Yeah,
did you actually use the 1.5 towards your budget?
yeah.
No, you're still up $600,000, right? So you
But
didn't.
every year they're giving us one.
No, I know what they're saying.
But every year, look at the surpluses every year.
Yeah, let's take this one offline, because that's, anybody heard the term last in, last out? Right, investors out there, right? Okay, so if I give you $100 towards a grocery bill, right, and then you give me, and I say, we're gonna need $300 towards groceries, and I say, I'll put $100 towards it, and I come home and I spend $190. How much did I actually put towards the budget? I still got my $100 in my pocket. So difference between verbiage, and this is why the public gets upset, because they just don't really understand the math. How is it that your surplus keeps going up and up and up? But that's another workshop where we'll dive into the actual finances of school boards.
We had a question in the back.
Yeah,
I just have a quick question on the timing of the audit.
yes.
Because in our particular case, the audit was not ready, but we need to prepare the budget, but we really don't know how much money there's going to be, so we need to prepare the budget anyway, and then the audit doesn't actually get done until all the numbers are solid. So when should an audit be completed in order to be able to impact a school's budget?
Before we answer, when do you think?
I think it should be probably the end of January, beginning of February.
Okay? What do you think?
Reality?
Yeah.
That's probably pretty close.
So in reality, your budget's supposed to be done in December.
They get
No, it is
extensions.
the audit.
Oh, I know, the audit, yeah. The audit, I know they get extensions, but you're asking when's a good time for it. I would say a good time for the audit to be completed somewhere around November.
Yeah.
Because you gotta ask yourself, if you close your books July 30th, why can't you,
June
why
30th.
aren't you prepared for the audit? I mean, June 30th, yeah. Why aren't you prepared for your audit? What's going on that you have to go back and forth, back and forth? Now let me ask you, who's responsible for the audit? The board. So let me ask you this, how many of you picked your accountant that does the audit?
Our school, the office in our district says they can't find someone to do the audit.
Yeah, right now.
There are no auditors available.
Okay?
But it's
So
true.
that's why it's always being delayed and being delayed. And I just woke up one morning and
Yeah.
took a phone call and asked to be on the school board.
Yeah?
And they did a write-in campaign and I won, so I've only been on since March.
Yeah, no, I love it. You're similar to me. That's similar to my story. And when you think about the audit, Bob's very familiar with these. But one thing that we all have to remember is that audit is our responsibility. So I want to talk about just one piece that they should all be very familiar with. That'll help them understand like the auditing part.
You mean about the responsibility of the financials?
Yeah. Thinking about the responsibility, but also the management letter. You know, the kind of.
How many folks have seen a management letter? Okay, more than I would have guessed. That's good, that's very positive. Yeah, so again, part of the problem, and corrective action plans? Yeah, okay. Okay, but again, so as you're reading through, if you've ever read an engagement letter, if you ever read a management rep letter, that's at the end, and you read the base of the financial statements in the audit, you realize that the only thing that auditor is responsible for is their opinion. All of the internal controls, all of the financial statement, all of the accounting is all the responsibility of you folks. You know, on the school board, excuse me. You know, so that's where the base of all of that sets. So there's a big difference between, and I understand auditors are they're scarce. It's a tough game. I totally understand that. But there's a difference between we didn't get the audit done because we didn't have the auditor versus all the record keeping wasn't in order, and therefore that delayed it longer. So there's a big difference, and part of that, like we'll talk about going down through, what should you be seeing on a monthly basis? What should you be ensuring that's being done? You know, so that we're not waiting for the district, we're waiting for the auditor, and they are, and they're hen's teeth right now. I totally understand that. Does that make sense? Yes.
And in theory, that the record's not in place should happen in 1 year. Kind of shouldn't happen every year, and I do think it does come down to every year the audit's coming back, 2 months after you start budgeting.
Totally understand. If you're tracking, though, you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, well, you're building your plan. Your plan's there, for what your budget is going to look like, along with some twists that we'll talk about as well in a few minutes.
So, are you saying that, I'm on the city council, so
Yep.
I get to review the budget, and
Yep.
I think they try to baffle us with BS, honestly.
Huh?
But, so what you're saying, or what I'm hearing is, the financial piece is the responsibility of the school or the school board, and is that not getting done on time typically? So that's delaying the review and reporting from the
Right,
auditor?
that's my question. I don't know the answer to that. But as far as being on the school board, the members should know, what's the difference? And again, part of that whole, your management letter, your corrective action plans, are they actually being done? Are we following up on those? Is the administration being held responsible? If they say they're going to do something, are they really doing it? Well, if it keeps coming back and it's egregious enough to be listed in the audit, whether it's a material weakness or what have you, if it's in there again, there's a big problem. There's an issue. Because it shouldn't be. Because everybody knows, oh, wait a minute, we weren't doing this right, or this wasn't up to our standards. Well, then we need to do something different. If they're not, then who's being held responsible or accountable? But that twisting of, well, yeah, we're delayed just because of the auditor. Are you? I don't know the answer to that. I know they're in short supply, but as the person or the board responsible for that oversight, they should know what the answer is.
And is that typically like the superintendent that's sort of responsible on the school side to get that
Well, the board's responsible for all the financials and making sure that the superintendent and administration is doing what they're supposed to do, which is a weird twist because nobody presents it that way. Certainly the administration doesn't, is my understanding.
Yeah,
Do you mind if I go back to your question?
Sure.
Your point about the money that hasn't been spent yet? And who, I'm assuming the principals, the administrator, the financial director, and the superintendent all know this answer. But who does the school board ask, and what do they say to find out where the money's not being used as you go along with the budget?
yep, that should be coming. If you don't have a finance committee, that means that your whole school board's a finance committee. And so who you should be asking is if you have a business manager, right? And or your assistant superintendent and or your superintendent, depending on how your model's set up, they should have that. So as they're going through, a lot of our school districts use, municipality school district might use Tree or whatever they're using for their bookkeeping. They should be giving you a monthly readout. And it should have, whether you're doing the major categories, just so you can see what's going through school admin, system admin, staff and student support, all that stuff, maintenance, where are we, and da-da-da. So I'll give you a general idea, which might ask some more questions, but there's nothing that says that you shouldn't be able to get a more detailed look at it. And we're going to show you some examples with not real numbers, but just kind of show you some of the things that you may want to look at when it comes to that. Because when I think about it, say you're a third grader and you're underspending in your elementary schools, and you're a third grader, what happens if I get a third grade and I'm behind? Am I ever catching up? Nope. So that'd be a great time to take whatever leftover money you have to do, whether it's interventions or whatever you're doing to really make sure that we're hitting that third grade. Or we might also start planning for fourth grade next year and be like, hey, you know what? They're a little bit behind, but we can catch them up, right? And we're going to talk about student performance in a little bit. Yeah.
I would differ from you on the thought of if there's money left over, we should spend it. I think differently than you do on that front. And because I do believe with a $13 million budget, $15 million budget, you've got to build in some extra, you can't be caught with no cash, obviously. Yep. So I think you build that in, and if it's there, I disagree with, we got to spend this.
Well, I'm not saying you have to spend all of it.
Yeah.
I'm saying think about the student impact, right? Yeah. So if you have students that are struggling, now some of us have an unassigned fund balance that's growing, right? There's a legal limit on your unassigned fund balance. So if I have an unassigned fund balance, it's already cushioning myself, right? Then that gives me an opportunity to spend what I have. Now you may be a district where all of your grades are hitting on full cylinders and every kid is getting the education they need and they are all exactly where they're supposed to be, right? That's a great place to be, and you're in a position where you can. I'm not saying spend all the money. I'm saying you should understand why the money isn't being spent, and if there is a place, because it should all come back down to what's the student impact? What's the impact on my students? And are they getting what they need in order to grow and develop and be on pace to where they need to be?
And that decision should remain with the school board because they should know whether or not it's being all spent. That was an example that where you could spend it here. But that's a school board decision on how to move that and not be caught with, oh, wow, we didn't know that. We didn't know it was sitting there. That's more of the accountability and focus on what the school board sees as priorities. Not necessarily just spend it, because I agree with you there. But it's, do we know, the data's there. Are we taking that data, turning it into information, telling the story instead of making up a story? Do we understand how it goes? And then we can make an intelligent decision on how to adjust that.
Because you also might make a long-term play and say, wait a minute, we're seeing a trend in this area, so we're not going to try to make up for everything between March and June. But what we're going to do is take some of this leftover money and we're going to use it towards part of our strategic plan to really increase X, right? Well, then as a school board member, I can go to anybody in my neighborhood, anybody in the community, and they say, hey, what are you doing with that? Oh, this is what we're doing. We made a decision as a board that we're going to go ahead and take that. And instead of just spending it this year, right, because maybe we hired a couple ed techs that are way better than we thought they were going to be, and they're doing so good that we didn't need the third ed tech. Right? And so it may be a position where it's like, hey, we thought we needed this, we didn't. We saw another opportunity where we wanted to put that money. We're going to use it over the next 3 years, back to your point about the unassigned fund balance. This is exactly how we're using this for the budget, right? And you can explain that.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a school board member that asked for accountability of $100,000, how it was spent. And they don't give it to us.
Okay.
So I did like a FOIA request. They're just refusing to tell us how they spent that $100,000.
Okay. I'm not going to give you legal advice.
So, no, I understand that, but you're saying that the board should be able to ask to get all this information. They won't give it
Let me ask you a question. Who's responsible for the contracts of the people that work for you?
The board.
School board. I got to tell you what, in my corporate days, if I had somebody and I asked them for information that I needed to use for making a decision, they decided not, and they weren't going to give it to me, guess what happened to that employee? But I'm not going to give you legal advice because I'm not in the employment type game and stuff like that.
You've got 9 or so on the board, they're gonna still hire them, give them a big fat raise,
Okay.
but we still don't have an accounting for that $100,000.
In many instances, the boards are basically captured by the administration, much as like regulators sometimes can get captured by the industry that they're regulating. They just get,
Yep.
there's no healthy conflict there. There's no,
Yep.
it's just, they feel like they're all part of the same team, and so there's no questioning of things.
Yep, no, I absolutely understand that. Absolutely understand. Hopefully what happens from here, and this is part of your action plan in your packet as you go home, you share what you're talking about here, right? And you're sharing this type of information because a lot of the people on your board are probably in the same spot. The board members that I know that are on different boards and stuff like that, they're really nice people. They have all great intentions. They're trying to do the best job they can. They just don't have the information they need. And the reason that they don't go along with some things like this is because they don't have the confidence, right?
I
So,
think they finally said they didn't have the information.
yeah, and so if they don't have the confidence to ask, when I was looking at things when I was on the school board, here I was a 20-plus year professional in finance, and I'm asking simple questions. And everybody on the parking lot would be like, yeah, that makes sense, we should ask for that. But when you get in the public and you actually have to vote to ask for that, that can be a totally different, we all know how that goes, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to distract at all. It seemed relatively
Yeah.
just a question ago. Could you guys please explain to at least me what a charter system is for tracking budget spending?
A charter system?
Yeah, it's something that an older conservative voter in District 98 was telling me should be implemented for understanding how every penny is spent. And it's just something that I came here wanting to learn more about, that type of thing,
Well, that sounds like
Sounds
accounting
like-
software.
Not the 11 cost centers, I heard about that.
Or a warrant system, which is,
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just putting in my head, I think they're probably using an older term, but when you think about the warrant system they have, so you're approving all of the expenditures before they go out the door, right? So there should be a printout of every expenditure that comes through, should give you the invoice, should give you the purchase order, give you the check number, should give you the date of it, should give you who it went to, should give you the amount and all that stuff. So, yeah, so.
From the way it was presented to me, it would give her everything that she had the right to.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the software. So with a finance committee, so when I was on our finance committee, I'd go in every 2 weeks and then I sped it up every week. And because those warrants are supposed to be reviewed, the budget is an approval to spend the money. So you get the money and you can spend it. But every one of those expenditures, and I'm not saying you go in and you check every single one of them, but those warrants are signed off by somebody, right? And it's a board responsibility to make sure the money's going where it's supposed to be going, right? So what they're talking about, if they're saying charter system, it's really probably the software they're using to produce their warrants, of which actually gives you an accounting of everything that's been put into the system, and then who was written to, the vendor, all that stuff, so you can actually go and look at it. I'm not sure if everybody doesn't have a finance committee, you may not be seeing these. Municipalities do the same thing. Town councils usually, depending on how involved they are, would get a warrant system and so that you'd be able to see that. Now, every district might be a little different, depending on what system they're using and how sophisticated a system they're using, right? So you may get more information, you may get less. Or some of you may not be getting any. You may not be able to say anything about where you're spending your money other than you get a update once in a while at budget time that says we spent this last year and here's how much we have left over.
Don't most have a system in place for over X, board sees it, under X, board doesn't see any of those. There's no warrant required. I think most have limitations, that if it reaches a certain level, then there is a warrant. Otherwise, it's
No,
just.
all checks have a warrant.
Yeah, all checks have a warrant.
Have a warrant.
Whether or not they show you, that might be an internal district policy.
They need approval.
Right, so one of the things that isn't part of this workshop is, and it comes into more of like a real financial oversight workshop, is really looking at your financial policies and what you've accepted as a board as a behavior. I can tell you when I was doing my research on our school district, that we had policies, we didn't have the in checks, but that's a different type workshop. But that all rolls up into what we're talking about here. So a lot of that would be caught here. So if you're getting that monthly financial report and you see that, oh, wait a minute, special education spending's it's right online. Or you might find, wait a minute, we thought we were either gonna be spending more or less. You think about student staff support, and those are opportunities for you, the plus minus, to be like, oh, wait a minute, we're either ahead or we're behind.
And
Can you just
why?
help us understand?
And why?
Like,
Yeah,
why were they?
absolutely. It's that question of, can somebody tell me why we're at this spot when we were anticipating this? Did we misanticipate? Have we made a mistake? Has something changed? But that type of information, that type of data, you tell your own story. You know what I mean? You know what it is, you can express it to the people in your community, and everybody understands that we're at this spot and this is why. Now, what we want to do about it, at least you've got a decision you can make, versus, I didn't know, which is very unfortunate. Yes?
I have a question about the finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
We've had the same 3 people on the finance committee. They've been on the board 14, 15 years for each one of them. When they get the report every month, superintendent says, all you gotta do is sign it. And they just sign it, and sign all the warrants, and then just hand it back. They don't read a thing. How can somebody ask to look at that and say, hey, wait a minute, we want to see a copy of this? Because the superintendent believes we work for him.
Yes.
His word is gospel, and we just follow along.
I-
And I argue with him every chance I get.
That's why there are no likes or comments allowed on the AOS 93 YouTube videos. They don't want us to see each other's thoughts and feelings. We don't have that freedom of assembly or speech at all where I live, it seems like. Even though things are much worse in other schools than my son's.
Go ahead.
So it would be fair to say then that if you really want to understand the accountability piece that the board is playing financially, that you need to know who is on your finance committee signing each warrant that's happening. That's probably the first entry point to understanding where every penny is going. Is that
Yep.
clear?
You look at your warrants, and one thing I would look for is, are they signing their signatures? I mean, dating their signatures.
Anyone can go and ask and look at
Yeah.
the warrant.
Right,
If
that's,
you're on the school board, you can go in and give them notice that you're coming in and you want to look at the items on the warrant, you can do it yourself. I, as a public person, a resident, I can go in and ask too. Anyone can see them. They want to make you believe that you can't, but you can.
and again,
It's
that,
from the town side.
right, that raising to that next level, if you're physically told no, again, then you're pushing into some legal stuff. But it's public. It really is.
It's public money and public can see it.
Right. Now, if somebody keeps saying no, again, that's another step you're going to have to take, but that should not be the case at all. Not even close.
It would be smart. You'll do it.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're here, right? This is one of the reasons we're here. We're going to show you a little bit later, and we're just starting to develop some stuff that should be able to help you really guide some of these conversations. Obviously, it's a big ocean out there, public education, but take them one step at a time. It's like I did a project for a district a few years ago, and the people I showed the results to, we went right through down to the budget, where did it, and they got really mad, and I said, please don't get mad, right? I'm just showing this to you, right? But hopefully now, and some of them were teachers, I said, hopefully now when you get a decline on your request for some sort of supply or something, you can now educate, ask your principal, well, didn't we budget X amount for this? Is it all gone? Where did it go? Like, actually start to ask some questions to really understand. And as a board, same type thing, right? Now, we do understand the culture, right? There's a reason that we're now, 41st or something like that, right? So this is a step going forward and really just help you all really understand this. And like I said, a lot of this other stuff, like it can be covered in another workshop and what have you to get more into the granular piece. But I think we got some more stuff that they're kind of thinking, the warrant article, this is what most people think about the warrant articles. See, there's a difference between the warrants and the warrant articles. The expenditure and payroll warrants, right? They look a lot different than your warrant article that's validation. Most people you mention warrants, they go, oh, that's the thing I go and vote for in June. Right. So revenue sources, we made it really simple. There's others that come in here, but they didn't meet all encompassing. But if you look at the big three, your state EPS, right? And we didn't put percentages here because I know that's different for everybody. And local taxes, and you have your federal grants, Title I and everything. Then you have some other stuff that might come in there. Maybe you got someone that really believes in education. They just drop $1 million check at your district each year and say, hey, use as you want, right? That'd be another source of revenue that you have in there. And then when you think about your expenditure breakdown, this isn't all the different categories, but they're kind of the bigger ones. Some of the ones that I look at here that are interesting, I was looking at our demo district. We're going to show you in a little bit. I found it interesting that for the support of the school board, it was 0.02% of the budget, but their administrative costs are closer to 10% of their budget, right? Seemed a little lopsided, right? The people that are responsible for oversight had barely any support or any money budgeted to themselves, right? But yet they're the ones that control the budget, right? So hopefully as we go through this, but these are the real big ones. Debt can be different no matter where you are. Transportation can be different. Some people still have their own buses. Some people, have a contract or what have you. You get special education. Instruction is always the biggest one.
In our district, special education, that's where they hide all the money. 2 years ago, I started getting involved.
Yeah.
And the superintendent put $100,000 on each school, each line, expecting our tuition out of our district, and they never used a penny of it.
Yeah.
But you knew it when they did it, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. The budget got approved.
Yep, it got approved.
Right, so once it gets approved, then when you kind of look at it, but that goes back to those monthlies. So when you think about your revenue mix, these are the big ones right here. I'd say a middle group of folks, it looks something like this. Some districts that get very little state subsidy, some get more state subsidy, and some of that, and that's for another workshop, some of how you put your information into the MDOE. So when you think about the budget cycle, okay, so when do you think the budget, when do all of you start your budget? November?
We started about April.
April? Well, that's a short.
Well, historically, we didn't really have all the data accurate
Yep.
numbers, like
Yep.
audit numbers.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Student numbers.
Yep.
The DPS formula gets changed, health insurance rates don't come in until April.
Yep.
So we would wait until April, and we would have it, so we'd have the validation vote on like the June primary day.
Okay, yep. That makes sense. So we get planning usually happens sometimes around January and February, right, for most school boards. Some a little bit earlier, I'm happy to hear that. Some are a little bit later, puts a little pressure on the board. Then you develop it February and March, and then you go through and adopt it April, May. Then you have your validation comes hopefully in June, right? And then oversight year round. So one of the reasons that when you kind of think about it, you're like, oh, January might seem a little late, it might seem a little early. As Bob has said a couple of times before, if you have everything in order and you're kind of coming through and you see how you're progressing for that year, that's really going to help you start looking at that planning part. And let's ask some of you out there, when you think about the planning of the budget, how many of you start with the priorities of the board to start the next year's plan? How many of you start?
It's typically been in the past under a superintendent that just left, not under the current one. It was her.
Yep.
And it was called her budget until it came over to the board.
Yep.
And then became a board's budget.
Yep.
It always was what she wanted.
Sounds very familiar. Sounds very familiar. And so when you think about this piece right here, let me ask you this: how many of you start your budget with your current year student performance? Okay. All right. So board responsibilities throughout the stages. When we think about planning, setting the goals and priorities, what are our student outcomes? Right. When we think about being student-driven, okay. If we're student-driven, like everything I used to do in my last role at the bank and everything I did at Seismic was for the people in which worked at the company and who I was supposed to be helping to do their jobs better and be more effective and to be, we used to, at Seismic, we'd have new technology coming out all the time with our software as a service, and we had to make sure everybody knew about it, but we also had to understand different nuances to it, and they had to understand their role and how they fit in the big picture and all that good stuff, so we had to start with the people and build up. Same thing with our students, right? Oftentimes, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard this, I heard it a few times. Well, last year our budget was this, and looking at the economic environment, our district will probably, they could swallow a 3% increase, and we start there. This is how much we think we can get approved, and then we're going to go ahead and when I've talked to a lot of principals and stuff, they're like, well, I figure they've been telling me we can probably go up a little bit, so I took my budget from last year and I added 1%.
Yeah, they budget for the increase, and that is not right.
Exactly right.
Right.
That's the backwards way to do it. So you really want to go with students. So if you actually start with the students, and this is another workshop too about budget creation, you start with the students, you may find your budget's less. If you're actually looking at student performance.
And also another way that I've been looking at it is what did they spend the year before and what are they budgeting this year?
Yeah.
And when they tell you it's 5.99, it ends up to be about 11 or 12%.
Oh yeah.
When you take the actual numbers back.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you a question. If I'm an administrator, what's my number one priority? Say I'm a superintendent, assistant superintendent. What's my number one priority?
Students, I would think.
Do you think? If I'm your superintendent, my number one priority is keeping that cushy job. Right? As an administrator, my number one priority is going to be, because how many times have you had your administration come in and say, hey, you know what? I think we should probably lower my pay. I didn't do so good last year. Our performance has gone down 3 years in a row. Everybody here, and actually what we're going to do is we're going to consolidate some of the functions, and we're actually going to use technology to make us more streamlined and efficient so that we can skim about $150K out of our admin and put it towards students. Anybody heard that story? Never hear it, right? And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying I've had jobs, right, where you're sitting there and when you go in front of the people that are responsible for you being hired, you're going to show them everything that they're going to like, right, because you want to preserve yourself, right? And if you think about it as a superintendent, admin, or what have you, these are really good jobs, right? Like you don't want to lose it, okay? Now, the beauty part is a lot of you rotate off every 3 years. And if I'm on the board for a really long time, I probably develop a relationship, right? And now all of a sudden it's kind of cozy, right? I've experienced that too. So you got planning, you're gonna set your priorities. And I'll speed up a little bit so we can make sure you get to lunch on time. Developments, you're reviewing the drafts, do assumptions hold. I'm pretty sure all of you will see a draft of your budget. It might be super detailed. I mean, I've seen one of those 72 pages that had every single detail in it. And I've seen some that are 1 page and got your 11 major expenditure categories, right? And depending on where you are, the information you get might be a little bit different. Adoption, so you vote on it, and then you go through your oversight, which is the monthly views, where you really think about you're on track, right? So if I'm a board member, there's 2 things I'm really looking for. I want to know how are we doing as far as our expenditures? Are we plus minus, right? And how are we doing on my student performance? Are we plus minus? I was once told I couldn't have student data because it's confidential. I was like, what are you talking about? It's confidential. Remove the names. All I want to know is what % of kids are passing 3rd grade right now, right? I want to know how many kids in 4th grade are actually on pace to get a year's worth of growth. I'm not asking you for confidential information. Take the 120 kids and average it. How many, right? Take the A's, the B's, the C's, the D's, and the F's. Put them together and give me an average. How are we doing, right? And so the wall that they held behind was that confidential part. Lo and behold, one of my hats used to be in HR, right? So I understand confidential information. I'm not going to ask you for students. I don't want to look at every individual student because they might be my neighbor, and I don't want to know I don't want to know more than I need to know. But I do want to know how they're doing, right? So strategic questions. When you think about it, does this budget advance our district goals? This is a question I ask my wife all the time, not about the district, but just how we spend money. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean to joke, but it's kind of the same thing, right? Who's ultimately responsible for it? You know, when my daughter, who's at college, is an authorized user on my credit card, right? Who's my wife blame? And not the kid, right? But when you think about it, when we're talking about the budget, does this advance our district goals? So something just as little as we want to go to Florida in the spring is how we're handling our finances right now, getting us to Florida in the spring. When I'm talking about school districts, our goal is to get every kid at least a year's worth of growth every single year so they're growing and developing, and they can go out whether they want to go to the workforce, whether they want to go to college, whether they want to go travel, whatever they want to do. Hopefully we're creating citizens that are going to be like you all are. You're obviously involved in your communities. You're productive, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish, right? So we want to understand, are we on goal with that? What's the per student impact? This is one of the things that used to drive me nuts, and it still does today. They'll tell you you can't really measure that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. How many people here use Power School? Right? Okay? How many of you have, I think a lot of districts use Tableau, right, reporting. The data is there. It's just a matter of, sometimes it's not a matter they don't want to give it to you. Sometimes they don't understand how to give it to you. When I was with the software company, Salesforce, anybody heard of Salesforce? Yeah, after 9 months, I was better at Salesforce than a Salesforce administrator. Why? Because I'm a real curious person. I get a quirky personality, right? Someone would tell me you can't get that, and I'd say, really? And then I'd spend Friday night getting it, right? And then I go ahead and use it, right? That's what this is about. Sometimes they just don't know, right? Sometimes you might have someone that's in a superintendent position that really doesn't have a finance background, but they have a CES, right? They have the qualifications to be a superintendent, but they never really intended to manage money, right? They might have wanted to be an educator, right? And then they got in this position. So,
And that helps build your story, though.
yes.
Your data, it builds your story. Why we want to put more money here or change our focus or our place or our long-term goal, short-term goal, whatever the case may be, you're looking at data. You're not going with a gut instinct. You're not going with a political instinct. You're not just guessing. You're like, well, wait a minute, this is what the data's telling us. So wouldn't it make sense as a board, you have the discussion, you certainly discuss with your neighbors in the community, this is our plan and this is why. Not because, well, we just want to do this or we don't like this person. It's this is our plan and this is what's turning our numbers around. Or our numbers are falling so bad, we've got to do something drastic because it's not working. So again, utilizing data, your argument is so much easier because you're not making an argument, you're just explaining, here's the case, and turn it in very simple, not 72 pages of Excel sheets and all that kind of stuff. Make it simple.
Yeah, make it so logical, because you think information, right, will make people emotional, and that's going to make it memorable, right? So when you think about the fact that you can provide people with that information, and if you want more money in your budget, and they show that the students are going down, right, and we're spending everything, and you can show them where you're spending it and what you're trying to do, and we just need a little bit more to be able to do that, right? That's going to create emotion in somebody, and then that's going to make it memorable. So when they go and they vote on their budget, they're going to be like, oh, I remember why the increase is in there, because we're trying to impact our 3rd through 6th grade students. Or we're trying to improve our career technical education. Or we're trying to, heck, we couldn't get approved by the state for the addition that we want on, but we don't want our kids in temporary classrooms. We want them to actually be in an extension of the, right? So we're trying to do some things. Those are things that people that are going to resonate with your committee, your communities, because those are things they care about too. Yeah.
What is a normal ratio, teacher per student?
Teacher per student, EPS has it like 16:1, 17:1. In my studies, and back when I used to study this kind of stuff, 15:1 would be what you're looking for.
11 to 1. So that was something that we wanted to change to save money, but that was last year, there was like no one listened to it. So.
Yeah, what you'd want to be able to do, once again, is back it up with student data. If your students are doing well enough that you can increase that ratio, and that's what happens too, because you'll see throughout the grades, the ratios change, right? And so then sometimes you say it's a standard of 17:1, and that's how we're going to determine that, EPS says that's how many teachers we need, or we might say 15:1 in our district, so we're going to have a few more teachers. But if you're failing, then you're probably going to need to lower that ratio. And if you're doing really, really well, you can probably get away with increasing that ratio. And depending on what topics are, right? And when you think about what the demographics of that group is, right? If I'm an AP class and I get 16, I can probably handle 20 AP physics students, right? If I'm in a remedial class, right, I'm probably going to want that number to be lower, not higher, right? So I can give a little more attention. I think there was a question in the back.
I was just going to say, in Hampton, it's around 25:1. Used to be 29:1. In the smaller schools, of course, you have the luxury of less.
Yeah.
So it's variable depending on how big the district is and how many kids attend.
Yep.
Bangor, you probably would be looking at 25 to 30:1, places like that.
How can we find out, like, what each school is in the state, the ratio? Is there a report we can run?
Not yet, but there is a way to get that. It takes a little bit of work.
Because that's going to be, for our budget season, saying 11 to 1 is ridiculous.
Yeah, what you'd really have to do is you go in, and this is public, so you can actually go into, somewhat public. So you can go in because every district enters their staffing into the Maine DOE data set, right? So you get the ED 279. One of the things we'll find, and we're going to show you this a little bit later in our demo, that doesn't necessarily match what you actually have. Right, so in order to get the actual staffing, okay, you have to find the public resources. So the best way for you to find out what the ratios are in other districts is each other in this room. Right?
The ED 279 has what they suggest, and then they have what your district is. Are you saying that number's not accurate? Because that is in the ED 279, telling you, like, because you get dinged
Right.
if the ratio is off, is high, low. You get dinged on what you're going to get for funding.
I'll show you an example a little bit later, that if you take the actual budget, and by the way, we do caveat our demo with, we're not a school board member, we don't work in a school district, so what we had to do is back into the ratios using average salaries and the amount of money being spent in each one of those areas, right? But you'll see that there's a bit of a difference. Now, the only way to actually get an accurate staffing count for your district is from your district, and then to be able to get it from another district. Some districts are really good about putting information on their websites. Some people don't even put your names, right? Some websites don't even have board members. They don't have any committee stuff. They just don't really have much of anything, right? So it kind of depends, but the best way, and this is one of the things we talked about as we were driving down that we thought would be really cool, if nothing else out of this workshop, the superintendents all work in collaboration, right? Wouldn't it be neat if some of you started to work in collaboration, right? Just knowing each other, right? And to be able to pick up the phone, once again, I hate to keep going back on it, but when I was working globally, oftentimes I'd be working on something that we're going to be doing in Germany. What did I do? I picked up the phone and I called one of my counterparts in Germany and said, hey, let me ask you, how would this resonate? Or can you give me an idea of how this would operate, right? Because I'm a guy from Maine. Right? I don't really understand the French culture as much as you do, right? And so picking up the phone or just emailing, stuff like that, and sharing information oftentimes is the best.
We're gonna do a database in order to do that, to ask the question.
Well, that may be coming. We'll see how this goes,
I
right?
had the question in the back, I think.
Yeah.
Mississippi's gone from 0 to hero. Do you know what they've done on their education?
I haven't. I know it's been a focus, but I haven't studied Mississippi nearly as much as us.
And changing up the curriculum and actually being quite aggressive with what they're doing.
Yep.
Very bold.
I do know when I was on the school board, one of the areas I studied was Minnesota. And when I studied some of their school boards, and we're going to give you an opportunity for this later, it was amazing to see the development and professional development the school boards were doing. Within their, if they're on the finance committee, they're taking finance courses, they're doing some of this stuff, and it was just really interesting. But obviously someone was paying for that, probably the school board. But what was really interesting about it is there's a direct correlation, because the more the school board knew, the more power they had, the more they were able to control what was going on, and the way they were actually be able to hold people accountable, right? To be able to do that. And once again, that's one of the reasons for this piece.
It would be a good thing to do a little investigation on that. I have connections now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll look into it. Field trip.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, from the city council side, we have to approve the budget.
Yeah.
In some cities or towns, the budget from the school goes to like a town committee that gets reviewed and approved. Anyway, point being, I think a lot of this data is in those presentations, like the student ratios and things. So if you're a member of the school board, I'm hoping you're seeing this data, but it should be part of the presentation that's kind of flowing up to the council or whatever budget committee there is at that level. So those ratios might be available in those presentations.
Yeah, and they should be. It should be all available. I mean, I got to tell you what. I don't know about any of you, but when I do a good job, I'll show anybody. Right? When do I not want to show people stuff when something didn't go so well, right? So these are all different things. And once again, if you're sitting there going, wow, I haven't seen any of this stuff, or this doesn't, I haven't heard anything.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly right. Don't feel bad about it. I mean, I've worked in a lot of different areas with this, but funding proven programs, how's this? Once again, that comes to data. What if enrollment changes, right? What if we have an influx? What if we have an outflux, right? I know in our town, we just had a nice little, I don't know if anybody else is going through reassessments, and hey, I don't know, maybe that causes some people to move to someplace else. But do we have evidence, right? Do we have evidence? This is one of those things that this can be hard to get your hands on too. But this is one way that school board members can really drive through data when we think about student impacts. To be able to do that. So talking about the ED 279, we're going to clip along a little bit here to get through section 1. So this isn't an actual one. I'm going to show you one in a minute, and hopefully I've redacted everything that tells you what district it was, but I had fun putting it together because it's what we use for our demo later. So you have your base, and you see I don't have any pupils or anything like that in there, but what would go is the base rate over the cross of the top, tells you how many pupils you have, and it kind of just goes over and tells you your per pupil cost. 4,500 is a made-up number, so please don't. All these numbers are made up, right? Then there's some additions in there, right? So you have your demographic information, right? That goes in, and you get a little more. Once again, these number ratios are off, but it's just to fill up a table. And then you go into your rural and what have you. Then it kind of totals up at the bottom, tells you what it is. 14,000. That was what, 6-7 years ago. Now we're up to 20, 21, whatever it may be. But this is real demo district number 1. It's actually from a Maine DOE. It's the FY25 allocation. It's got the base rate plus adjustments plus your subsidy. And you can always compare to your prior year. But when you look at it, of course, across the top, and this is why I talk about fat finger numbers. You got your pre-KK, you got your 1 through 5, 6 through 8. So that's all of your kids. So you take that number there. What you're talking about, Leo, yeah, here's the EPS suggestion. Here's what the actual FTE that the district put into the system under the staffing on the Maine DOE site. You can see here, there's some that are a little bit off, some are a little bit on. And then you just kind of go through, and we won't go through each line, but hopefully it looks pretty much familiar to you. But this is how the state kind of goes down through and calculates it. The benefits that change all the time, right? Seems like health insurance companies aren't coming in with lower rates often. So that kind of changes, but you kind of group these in. And as you can see, this is an attempt to take the whole EPS formula would be a whole nother workshop. But this is just what sets your standard for what it would be. And then you have any type of debt that you might have. Debt's really cool. We're going to show you this later. Debt, some districts list all of their debt. Some districts only list state subsidized debt. And some districts list state subsidized debt plus debt they want to list. So when you look at these, if you look 10, 12, 15 of these, you're going to see different things in here. But then when you go look at the actual budget, you see, what wouldn't be state subsidized debt? Oh, we have to replace half the roof on one of our elementary schools. It doesn't fit within the state approved projects, but we got to do it anyway, so we're going to pay it ourselves. We take out a bond, take out a whatever for some debt. Then you go down through this nice little calculation here, which puts it all together for your major. Here's what they're saying that it should. There's their suggestion. You got your local part, the 4.7. You got the state part, 11.7. Then it kind of breaks it down again for you, and then kind of clicks through. So, ED 279, as a board member, you'd want to see that information before it's inputted, right? Because you'd want to make sure that it looked accurate to you and everybody agreed on it and you really understood what was the basis of here in the state of Maine, what you're going to get. The enrollment, one of the things you really want to look at, one of the things I'd probably be looking at now that I didn't know when I was on the school board is our school district's made up of 4 different communities. I'd really want to know what's the enrollment for each one of those communities by grade, stuff like that, so I can see if it's a realistic expectation, where we are. And then advocate if your local share is too much, right? Some of us are stretched,
You better believe it.
right? So if you think about it in your local allocation, say that EPS comes out, the ED 279, you're going through that and you figure, we're going to get about 11.7, or we're going to get 16.5 again. That's what the whole thing is. They're giving us 11.7 again. That's what we talked about prior years. But we found that all of a sudden we need an extra $2 million. And it's not going to be included in the state subsidy. So now all of a sudden you just took your 4.7 or what have you share locally and made it 6.7. Now if that's something that you know that your community is not going to be able to handle, that's your turn to advocate, right? And that's why it's so important to be having this year-long cycle to really understand what's happening in your district so you can see this coming beforehand so that you're going to be able to ask those questions about why the extra money? Because if it's more enrollment, right, that's something that we're going to have to really kind of plan for. If it's less enrollment or if it's we need more teachers, whatever that may be, right? But you need to advocate for your constituencies with the school board because it may just be some stuff that maybe it's things that the administration wants to have that you might say, wait, that's not something that we can tolerate. Yeah.
Does the 279 factor in at all to Title I funding? When I look at the check poverty, we have one school in our district where typically lower income. And what I was told is that Title I funds follow those students to the middle school and to the high school. And I'm not sure that I believe that. But I just wasn't sure whether that 279 subsidy factors in. I can't see it.
Oh yeah, this just kind of shows in a calculation they add a little bit of money for each person that's disadvantaged, but you're down here, the EPS target. So you have your disadvantaged up here at 0.38 that comes across, it gets weighted, what have you, but the EPS, but from my understanding, the Title I, federal grants, all that stuff is totally separate. This is just they just know that people that you know, a little bit disadvantaged, you're gonna need a little bit more assistance.
How do they know that?
Maine care.
It used to be free and reduced lunch.
Free and reduced lunch is a big one.
I'm just curious how they do that now.
Everybody in our school district gets
Free lunch, right?
Right. That'd be something that we'd have to dig in that goes back into the formula. But it's a great question to really understand how your district's actually putting those in, because they're the ones that are putting these numbers in, right? So when you think about it. So when you think about back here, this number, notice how that pre-K number is different than that number? So right up here, it goes from 82 to 59, average 70.5. Up here, pre-K goes from 211 to 175 with an average of 193. So someone, has inputted that number. So as I said earlier, if that's supposed to be 69, but it only says 59, right? If you follow the calculation across the board, that's money, right? So making sure those numbers are accurate, right, as they go in, because those can have consequences on the amount of money that the state thinks that you're probably going to need.
How would you find the numbers? How would you know that your example, you said if they punched in a 59 when it should be a 69, how would we find that number?
Student census.
Either student census or they got to be working off a worksheet that they're calculating, so there's nothing wrong with asking people to show their work. So before this is entered, we want to make sure we see what you're entering into it. And then once it's entered, you can always go back in. Because one of the things it does have is a caveat on the below that those numbers might change. So sometimes it may just be, oh, we didn't catch it and what have you. But if you're able to catch it and you know, advocate for changing it, yeah.
Twice a year, I think the schools have to report their student
Yep.
counts. And I've never, ever heard like what went into that. but
Right.
Those two are what matter in the average from basically.
Mm-hmm. And above pre-K and K, it goes by the average. For pre-K and K, it goes by that October number, so the previous year. Yep. Staffing integration, ED 270 drives your staffing ratio suggested. It's always a good idea to compare with your peers. I was looking at 4 different ED 279s the other day, and it's interesting not only to see the difference in the per pupil cost, but also to see how they're staffing, right? The group that we're showing you, it was pretty interesting to see. They're pretty close to the EPS when you look at the EPS piece. Another district I was looking at had probably half again as many. So if they were supposed to have 90 teachers, they had like 130, right? But that's something that they're budgeted into their budget.
Excuse me, are there any ratios that you look at particularly? So I'm from Falmouth.
Yeah.
So our comparables are Cape Elizabeth and Greeley. And the one that I look at as an outsider, very critical
Yep.
of the process, is percentage of teachers above EPS.
Yep.
And Falmouth, for example, comes out, I think the average is, around 25 to 30, and we were at 42% over
Okay.
EPS formula.
Yep.
So are there others that you would say we should be looking at really closely in that type of situation for our comparables?
Man, I think I was looking at York the other day. I mean, York has a pretty high group of teachers. But the thing I think I'd look at more than what the others are doing is I'd kind of look at what's their performance like.
Performance is roughly comparable. We're selecting relative to the other two.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question that you have there is, I think your comparables are really good. It's kind of like real estate. The closer they are, the better off you're going to be. And I think that just kind of asks some questions of what are they doing that we're not doing, right? Whether you ask another board member or even ask your administration, ask them to, hey, can you research what your peer is doing over here that we're not doing that's making us have to have more teachers than they do? Or why don't we have as many teachers as they do?
Well, at the risk of monopolizing, so the 3 drivers I identified as an outside citizen were at the middle school and high school, we were allowing teachers in a 7-block day to have 2 preparation periods per teacher per day.
Okay.
I felt that was high. Other people allowing 2 prep periods, that's 28% of their time, not teaching. People do those studies as board members on school district boards? I don't know. The other 2 were, we have over 250 electives. I found 65 of those electives when you consolidated for all the co-teaching situations. 65 are running with 8 or fewer students per elective class. So that's like a prep school.
Yeah.
And the third one was the ratio. The ratio you were talking about was the overall ratio. The ratio that they tell me we should be targeting is 80, this is at middle school and high school, how many students should I touch as a teacher? 85 is sort of the standard number that I was told is a reasonable ratio. We found that the middle school, because of team teaching, I found this,
Yeah.
I couldn't get elected. But I found this, that they were running more around 72 instead of 85, because they were co-teaching at certain times, so we had a teacher
Yep.
there, not actually teaching.
Yep.
So, I mean, is this what boards are doing? I don't know, because I don't see my board doing this.
I think you'd be a great board member. These are the exact questions that people should be asking.
I can't get elected without.
Yeah, but those are the exact questions you should be asking, because you've done your. I used to do that myself, and you'd kind of look at it and you figure out what's happening in other areas. I mean, it's the same as in business. If you're a business and you've got another business that's in the same business you are, but they seem to be making a lot more money than you are, and you go ask them what are they doing. Well, we automated this whole process over here, and you've got you're doing it the old-fashioned way with yellow legal pads and pen and paper, and you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Now, cultural change is difficult because, and I'm not going to make judgments on towns or what have you, but some people like to feel like, oh, you know what, our teachers are the best. They're the best paid, they have the best lifestyle, they don't turn over, we keep them forever, and that might be a priority of that community. Others are, okay, wait a minute, we're going to go lean and mean as much as we can. I know there's some districts out there where some teachers aren't getting a prep. And so it's a matter of some are team teaching, some aren't. But those are great questions to be asking, and hopefully board members are asking those.
Well, I have $1 million question. What are we going to do? Every year, the budgets go up and up and up. People's property taxes are going up and up and up. How are we going to fund schools? Property values is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a question I can't answer, but we will be able to show you. Well, if we get to the end of this presentation, we got something we can show you. Okay, to that same point there too. So here's an activity. We'll just take a couple of minutes. We're running well behind. So let me just ask you. So we'll just do this all together, so we can keep on going because we're done section 1 of 4. When you think about your district's funding, just kind of think to yourself, do you understand it? Right? And you don't have to admit it in front of public right now, but just kind of think to yourself, do I understand our district funding, how we get funded, right? And does that budget, right, as we take that money and we split it across our budget, would you say, how many of you here would say when in your position as a school board member that the budget that you have in place right now actually reflects your top 3 goals as a school board?
So, again, not being on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The council level, I see, a big chunk of funding comes from the state level, just for various calculations. And that comes with strings attached, right? So some of those strings are a lot of, like counselors and that kind of thing that isn't directly teaching. And that's a huge budget chunk that I see that if we didn't have strings attached to these budget funding mechanisms, it would be better spent elsewhere.
Yep.
Ratios or whatever, what have you. That's one thing I see.
Yep.
One thing I'm seeing right now are a lot of social workers are being hired.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sucking up a lot of money.
Yep. Yep. I was surprised the number that I saw.
Every year, they're adding half of one, a whole one,
Mhm.
50%, one or two.
Mm-hmm.
You have a mental health problem.
Yep.
But that is eating up a lot of money.
So how many people here would say that your budget, as you see it today, reflects your top 3 goals as a board? Probably nobody, right? And this is one of those things, like when you think about cultural change, we're not going to go from where we are in the state of Maine to where we need to be doing the same old status quo, right? But as someone that's done a lot of transformational work and at a large scale, it takes time, but it only takes a start, right? Once we start doing it and we build from that start, we're able to really drive that change. And one of it's you all showing up today. I know it's Saturday morning in November, and none of you had to show up, but you showed up today, right? And hopefully you're gonna get to know each other a little bit throughout the day and make some connections. And if you only make one connection that you can pick up the phone, over the next week or so and be like, hey, I had some questions after that workshop. I mean, you can always reach out to us, but when you think about that sharing, right? And some of those commonality type pieces. And hey, have you ever been successful at getting this? Or would you know what to call this, right? Well, a lot of times people don't ask for stuff because we just don't know what it's called, right? And how would I explain what I'm looking for? Go ahead.
So our budget's about $40 million for our district, and made up of 7 schools in the 5 towns that build the district. Last year, they proposed an $81 million bond to do all these little things everywhere. One of them was to do AstroTurf on the football field. And they were shocked when it was turned down by all towns. And it's like, so they started, and our superintendent left, our assistant superintendent left. So we have an interim superintendent, he's hired all new people in there. And we now have to present a budget to the school, to the towns coming up here. The first meeting, town meeting that we have to present to is in like February, March. But we've just then sell it so they can then pass a budget come June. And I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Because our accreditation's on the line for the high school. We've been on the warning list for years.
Yeah.
Years. And the last superintendent just kept saying, oh, we'll just pass it. They'll just keep pushing it along. It's like, no. So the interim superintendent's like, no, this is a priority. We need to get this figured out.
Yep.
And I think we've only moved like 12 spots in 24 years on the building list.
Okay.
So we were at 64 and we're down to 50.
Yeah. So you still got to wait.
Yeah, so we're going to have this high school for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
And it's like, but getting them to understand, that's why a bunch of us, they encourage me to run, get involved.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think you're a good person to do it. And really asking questions, especially with the new superintendent stuff, it's a great opportunity because they're still building a relationship with you. And if they get new people in there, a great person to ask, if you have a new business manager, or if it's some people have the assistant superintendent's actually the business operations manager. And you have, asking them some questions. Hey, as you're coming in, I was at a workshop and I was wondering, like, what do we have for XYZ? And then when they think about it, like, how they come up with 81 million, but really thinking about what are the top needs that they're seeing as they're coming in right here today, right? And does that align with what you're doing? And then it's also a great time to be like, hey, you know what? I've seen them new. Like, how would I get some of this, like, how would I get some of this information so I can make an educated decision, but also support our school in a way in which our communities come on? If your budget's 40 million and you're looking for 80 million in bond, I don't know about anybody else, but I probably don't even read it. I'm just gonna say no. I'm just gonna say no. I'm just gonna say no.
A bunch of needs and a bunch of wants, and the wants were just screaming out at everybody.
Yeah.
Not the needs. Instead of just
Yep.
saying, no, we need to do this.
You got to fix the needs before you go for the wants. Yeah. Go ahead.
On reflecting on the 279, the formula that the state is using is, an outdated basis. Okay, so Paula was in charge of the 279 department there. She says, yes, I know, we're working on it, and then the school district I'm in is put together a letter to the state and saying, you're using the old formula, can you, you need to, and the argument is you can't change one section without changing another, and so that's the excuse from the state as to why they can't adjust the formula. And everything has to go through the legislature, bottom line. So, but we count on plans and all of that. What is your suggestion about what can be done to get this thing moving more quickly so that we can get a more accurate funding? Right now, we're using old numbers to take care of
New things.
instead of using AI and all the rest of the stuff, we're using some pencil and paper.
Yeah.
Same idea, I guess.
Yeah. The only suggestion I have on that is working with your legislators, because they're the ones that are gonna have to make the change. You know what I mean? And understanding, what we're trying to do is how do you do the best you can with what you got. But when it comes to stuff like that, when I was working with the Attorney General's office on a project that had to do with public education, or we're not working with, I was in constant contact with them. Pretty much the answer they always came back to me was your local council members and your legislatures are the ones that will influence and change, and then you'll have an argument, right? It wasn't just, I'm a smart guy from Hamden who's lived a couple of years and want to do it. But yeah, it's a great observation. When you think about education, one of the things that I think that falls flat on the state of Maine is When you think about the state of Maine talking about how they want to grow, they want to develop, they want to, technology center, they want to do all these different things and stuff. But yeah, when you think about our educational system, as I said earlier, it's an outdated model, in which you can, well, that's for another day. I'll give you my next opinion. We're going to go through this. We've gone through a lot of it through a lot of the questions you have. But some of the key reports is the state subsidy, the monthly financial updates that you should receive, federal compliance reports. And when you look at the timelines in the month, when you think about January and February, when you're sitting there planning and setting your goals, February through March is the development, when your ED 279 comes out. April and May, you have your adoption. Then you have your validation, and then you go down through July through June is your oversight. Revenue forecastings, when you're looking at your property values and your mill rate to kind of see what's going to be available for you. EPS formula once again, and then any grant applications, you should know what kind of grants you're getting, what are you getting from the Fed, what kind of stuff's coming in that has all those strings attached to it. Cost drivers, we know the biggest one in most districts is salaries and benefits.
80%.
Yep, it's a big mark. Special education increases can cause that too. Administrative system of school, they seem to be continuing going up in a world in which they're coming down, right? Transportation and fuel, you have your utilities, you got your debt service. And so really when you're thinking about some of these reports, and these are all made up, Q1 is July through September. I was supposed to ask you when you thought it was, right? So how many of you during Q1, let me ask you, we're in November right now. So how many of you have had your Q1 review of your financial performance for your district? You got one, okay?
Two.
Two?
We get a monthly budget report every month.
Budget versus actual?
Yeah.
Yep.
The actual budget that we adopted, the general fund budget, and it shows every line in that, what was spent year to date, and then it also does encumbrances.
Yep.
We know what the teacher's salary is gonna be the rest of the year.
Yep.
So you can get to an estimate of what you might have left over at the end of the year. We have one every month.
Nice.
Good.
Nice. That's a great practice to have, because then it allows you to kind of ask questions what's happening. So you should kind of looking at your expenditures, your revenue and your expenditures. When you think about CFA, think about your revenue and then think about your debt, right? I'm not sure if all of you get debt schedules on what you're paying in every month, or if you're paying them on quarterly, or if it's a lump sum yearly or what have you on any type of debt you might have in your system. But you want to make sure that you get an update on that so you know where that's going. And then just really looking at if you're getting the budget versus actual, depending on how detailed it is, really taking a look at pluses versus minuses, like what's going above, what's below. What's the plus minus on these? And does it seem like it's in a relative space, right? I know, we had one where it came in and it was like, well, we had a teacher leave that was making $72,000. Well, I don't think it was that much. It was making X amount of dollars, but we hired 2 new teachers and, it was a little bit less or what have you.
But the key is to make sure that you've got an answer. Anything that isn't, and it's not going to be dead on, but anything that looks too much of a percentage-wise or dollar-wise when you combine them, you're looking for something that's materially, that seems out of whack. What a great question. And again, it's not offensive, just, geez, this seems odd, or this seems different than what we were thinking. Kind of what's going on in this category is a great question. And again, the more information that you're able to process and look at, the easier it is to talk to the community. And you understand what's going on as things advance during the year.
I'd like to just make a comment, where I've been involved in the school finance. When you're projecting a budget, it's a best guesstimate. It's not, it's just a guess. You know who your players are, if you have to hire a new teacher or someone's leaving or whatever, but it's a guesstimate. Then there's no way you can be 100% on.
Guaranteed, and that's just what I said.
So,
yep.
Sometimes they are over, and sometimes the lines are under. Like for instance, workers' comp, you might not have the rate for it. I know this year we were under budgeted,
But you know why that line was under, don't you?
right.
Oh.
But I'm just saying, when they're doing the school budgets, it's at the time that they're doing it. That's what they think. So give them a little bit of slack.
No, we're not. Yeah, we understand, but that's what we're saying, pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
We're not asking you to be like, hey, we're going to convict you because you were off by X. We're saying, hey,
There's no way.
if you look at it, and I'm looking at teacher salaries, right? And you're 1 quarter in, and your total teacher salary is $8 million for the year, and you're at 1.2 versus the $2 million you're supposed to spend, I would think someone would ask a question. If you're at 1.997, you're probably, oh, geez, okay, well, the teacher we hired didn't have as much experience as we thought we were going to hire, and so he came in a little bit less. Yeah, to your point, nobody's going to be perfect, but that's what we talked about earlier. When you kind of think about as the year progresses, understanding what these variances are. If it makes sense, it makes sense. Hey, my auto insurance went down, so my monthly payments went down that month. That's great, right? I understand why that went down, right? But if all of a sudden you come in, it's like you have a line item on student staff support or something like that, and all of a sudden it's, $150,000 over, which is a 10% increase over what you thought it was going to be, right? And you want to be able to understand what that is, right? And it might not even be a problem, right? All we're trying to equip you all with is to be able to ask those questions to really understand what's happening, so that you can talk about. I'll tell you, when I was in the corporate world, and even I see this happen in education. Not everything you try works, but understanding why it didn't work and going up and saying, hey, you know what we tried, right? We wanted to do this, and it didn't result in what we thought was going to happen. If you can explain that, most reasonable people are going to say, oh, okay, that makes sense. If they come out and say, hey, why are you $3 million over? Or why are you consistently $1 million over? And you're like, well, we didn't spend it, right? People are going to say, well, I think you're taking me to the cleaners, right? So that's just the power of asking those questions. Yeah?
We have an almost $62 million budget for 2,400 students. The budget just passed, I'm going to the voters for the third time. When we got the budget initially, it was so high, it was $3.5 million more. We asked the superintendent then, who has just resigned, to come back to us with what she thought could be deleted. And she deleted almost $2 million of her own budget. So I might suggest that if the superintendent is giving you their budget, one of the questions that you might want to ask them is, in this budget, what do you believe could be deleted? Because that's the only way that we knew
Yeah.
what had transpired.
And hopefully you'd get that throughout the year too. Because as they're, I know they present their budget. I know a lot of school districts, superintendent comes out, here's our budget, right? And then you kind of take a look at what. But if you're going through the year and you're watching these things, what should be happening in January is the board should be telling the superintendent, here are our priorities, here's how we're doing, here's where we think our money should be go. You go write it up. Right?
In our school, how it works is November, they meet with all the principals in each building.
Yep.
And get what they want, what
Yep.
they need in their budget. So they talk about it, the superintendent and the finance director, and they talk about it, and they're like, or yes, we'll put it all in.
Yep.
And then they see what the bottom line is, and then they start taking it out. But that's usually how it happens.
Oh yeah, no, in real life, I got to tell you, if you're going to allow me, your employee, to tell you what to do, by all means, I'm going to do it. By all means, I'm going to do it. Now, the way it should work is the reverse, right? And that's why I talk about cultural change, right? And we can't change culture in this room today, but really, this is a great conversation. So as we think about these budgeting, the budget cycle, right? Yeah, go ahead.
On student performance, can you go a little bit more deeper into that? Because, we get the reports of what the state is doing, what, people around, our neighbors are doing, and where our students are. We get this percentage, report. Is there anything else besides to determine what is, how you can weigh student performance, how they're doing?
Yeah, let me ask you this. So where you are, November 8th, how many of you got an update on how your students are doing in your school district?
No, nobody.
You have. What did it look like?
It's better than last year.
Okay, so what kind of information did you get?
We had absentee, we had scores that were comparable to the last time. It's called a data story. And
Yeah.
we do it twice a year.
Okay, and what kind of scores were in there?
Oh gosh, it was awful. But I mean, it was like.
No, I mean,
No,
like,
no.
were they NOEA? Were they NEAP? Were they, so assessments?
Yes.
Yep, so you get your assessment scores. Everybody's familiar with assessment scores. Okay, how many people here, if I were to ask you, what's the average grade for your third graders, what would you tell me?
I mean, for us, it's just that we have like 30% were at or.
Right. Let me ask you a question. How much, when I think about student performance data, and with the demo we're going to show you, right, we could only use the state assessments. Because as just a regular person, I wasn't able to get, I can go to the U.S. News and World Report and get the NOEAs and whatever, but I just wanted to really pull it right out of Maine DOE. What we're talking about with student performances, when every single student walks into class on the first day of the year, you have told them you're going to get the education that you deserve and you need, right? Now, what happens in most of our school districts are we have no idea how any of our students are doing. We get a graduation rate, okay? Well, say your graduation rate's at the state average, I think it's a little bit over 87. Do we know how many of those kids actually graduated? How many of those kids are actually just graduating because we're allowing them to just graduate, right? So when you think about it, when I talk about student data, what I'm talking about is you should be able to get your hands on how your students are doing. And we're already in November. And if someone tells you they don't have that data, they're not telling you the truth. Because teachers, what do they have to do? They have to enter their scores into, most people use Power School. So they have to enter the scores into Power School. The scores are there, the data's there. Someone just doesn't want to show you because they're probably not real proud of it.
Well, they keep also changing, and it's kind of weird in our district that different schools are using different rating systems.
Yep.
Rating, and I'm like, why is this not across district that we are doing this all the same way? And I think part of it is they don't want us to know.
Exactly right. Well, I'm not going to make judgment on people, but I will tell you a trick that I used to do. If I wasn't really happy with my results, I'd measure them differently for different groups and be like, see, this is not really apples to apples. And it bought me another 6 months to figure out what was going on so I could come back with a good news story, right? And, it's kind of like curriculum changes. Why do we change our curriculum? Because someone said we're changing the curriculum. Well, do you know if you change your curriculum every 3 years, you can't hold anybody accountable? Because it takes 3 years for it to take hold. So why don't I just change my curriculum every 3 years? Now, a question that I asked once was, hey, we're changing our middle school math curriculum. Are we also changing the science, the social studies? What are we doing in grades 2 through 5? What are we doing in our high school? And they're like, what are you talking about? We're just changing math in the middle school. I said, no, you're not. You're changing your K through 12 curriculum by replacing a piece that's middle school, but that also affects everything else you're doing. Can you help me understand why we're doing this? Can you give me the math behind we're doing this? And pretty much what I got was, well, studies show. Show me the studies? No, studies show whatever. You know why it changes? Can anybody take a guess on why it changes? Go ahead.
Because of the state standards, that's what I was just told.
Well,
They renorm the test every 3
state standards, what's another really good reason? Those textbook people are great salesmen.
We don't have textbooks anymore.
If it's online, whatever it is, I got to tell you, I come from an enablement company. We're a great salespeople. You know what? Hey, whatever you're using today isn't as good as what we got. You put our stuff in place and you're going to be rocking the world. You're going to get results that you've never seen before. But guess what? Only if you use it correctly. Only if you know how to implement it. Only if you're engaged in it. Only if you have somebody that can drive that. A textbook or a piece of software or what have you, think about it. You sit someone down in front of an online academy that doesn't even know how to log in. What are they going to get out of it? Nothing. They need some guidance, right? And that's where the whole combination comes from. I think there was a question in the back.
The other thing I'm seeing in our district is the No Child Left Behind.
Yep.
Push them through, we don't care how bad they're doing.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
And we've had teachers that have requested kids to stay back.
Yep.
Or come in for extra help, or come in during school vacations, they're willing to come in and work with them, so they can finish for the year, get caught up, stay caught up. Parents say, no, they're fine, sign them.
Yep. That's why if you look at MDOE, the 6-year graduation rate's pretty good. Almost everybody that goes through high school goes through 6 years of high school graduates. I mean, it seems kind of funny, right? But it's a good number. It's better than a 4-year. It's better than the 5-year, right? Some of you are thinking, what are you talking about, 6 years? Yeah, you go onto the website, you can pull our 6-year graduation and compare district to district. So that's what I'm talking about, student performance. We're going to whip through these pretty quick because I do want to make sure we get through everything. But this is, we already talked about this, but when I'm thinking of the monthly reports, like this would be a high level, like budget versus actual. You know how much is supposed to come in the first quarter. So this is what we budgeted, this is what we spent. We go down through here. You get your facilities, and then you get your total. Let me ask you on this one. This was going to be our activity, but I don't think we're going to have time for a lot of our breakouts. If you look at this, does anything stand out to you? This is Q1.
Transportation, is it? No. Fuels up.
Deferred maintenance on the facilities.
And spending the money
But anything that's really stand out to you?
Enrollment's down. Transportation's
Okay, enrollment's down.
right?
Enrollment's down with the student,
Eight, fuel's up.
Okay, you're close. Q1.
Oh, wait a minute, okay, they budgeted 700,000 and the actual 720. Is that what you're looking at?
Nope.
Fuel's up.
Shouldn't have transport.
Nope. Remember we're talking about pluses and minuses.
Facility deferred, what's that?
No.
Oh yeah, the reason they're down by 20K is they deferred a project. So maybe the people weren't able to do it. I don't know about you, but I have trouble finding electricians and plumbers and stuff. But look at this right here. Underspend by $250,000 in special education in Q1. Would that elicit a question? Yeah. Now they have aides are down. How many aides do you think that is?
How many aides?
In 1 quarter?
Yeah.
That's a lot of aides.
That's a lot of aides.
That's a lot of aides.
So I get two questions.
You don't have any aides.
Yeah, my question is, what's an aide? Are you talking about ed techs, ed tech 1, ed tech 2, ed tech 3? Are you talking about someone else that came in? Like aides is pretty big thing, but 83%, I'm sitting here all of a sudden, remember what we're talking about with the Title I and the federal and the grants and all that stuff? The reason we threw this one up here, and I did manipulate this number, the reason I put this up here is, like this would right here, it's Q1 already, I'm like, wait a minute, why are we $250,000 below what we're supposed to spend? Now, you may get a reasonable explanation why our aides are down because we had 2 students we thought were coming in from another community. They each needed a one-on-one, right? They had additional what have you, whatever. So they haven't come in, plus we were going to get additional, there may be a reasonable explanation, or it may be that it just didn't happen. So when you're looking at these, and then they'll get a little bit more detailed, where that's a high level, the ones that I like to look at are the ones that are detailed, right? So when I was on the school board, I love the warrants. I'm just one of those people. And just to give you an insight of what kind of person I am, after I got off the school board and I was researching this, I took every single expenditure in a warrant for 8 months and I documented it and I followed it through. Anybody here seen the accounting handbook that tells you what the, so the codes? So I took every one of those codes, made a grid, bumped them all up so I could make my own summary of what was really happening. It was eye-opening. That's just kind of my personality. So as you go through now here, these make up those bigger numbers, right? And the numbers won't add up because they're all fake numbers. But these are the more detailed reviews that you'd be able to get. And so you just kind of look through it. And so some of the insights you're looking for are we on track? Should we be monitoring, right? And are we already over, right? If we see things like all of a sudden something happens and oil prices go through the roof, right? We're going to need to make some sort of modifications on some other things because that's going to impact our facilities, it's going to impact our transportation, what have you. And when you think about analysis tips, looking for trends, question the outliers, and tie everything to student outcomes. You can never go wrong. Well, I won't say never. You can hardly ever go wrong focusing on your students. Right? I tell you, as a coach, I hardly have a hard time if I need, I'll give you an example. This year we added undershirts to our uniforms, right? We didn't do that through the school budget. We did that because as I was talking to people, I said, you know what would be really great in October for our girls? What? If they had undershirts that go with the uniform, so, not everybody has the same demographic, right? Why make them pay their own? And we got 3/4 zips. Do you know how many parents said no? 0. It was easy, right? Now, if I went out and said, hey, give me $2,000, what for? I just want to have it in the account. It's not going to happen, right? So when you tie everything to the students, they'll recognize that. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that some students need a little bit more than others. And then when you look at this is just another detail when you think about those federal grants, and this would be something that you'd be able to get. You'd see, okay, what's the program name? Is it Title I? Is it grant money? Where does it come from? Who has it? What are the expenditures currently? Does it have to do with any type of special programming like COVID's not too far back in the past? And then they'll have different notes on here, right? So it's really just an opportunity for you to be able to look at it and say, okay, this is just a gut check, right? Does everything seem to be moving in the right direction? Does it make sense to me? If it doesn't, I want to be confident enough to ask that question, right? And say, and know that, I know how these school boards work, right? We had a voted weighted system of mine. Oftentimes I'd be the 1 out of the 14, right? But that's where I think this type of collaboration and what Heidi and team are doing, bringing people together, really works really well, because at that point in time, my only outlet was my chair, right? Well, the chair was a really nice guy. He wasn't trained to be a board chair, right? So he did the best he could with what he had. So some tips on this, once again, just looking for trends, outliers, tie into the students. And on this one, we'll skip this one because we just did it, but I think you're kind of getting the idea. When you look through all of those, what you're really looking for, things that look out of whack. And to your point, if it's over by 1%, under by, I mean, I think we usually do in data analytics and data science and stuff, like a 3% margin or something like that. And then you have your, we can get into some technical stuff, but just kind of looking at it. But you're always going to have a little bit of wiggle room.
One thing that's important, like when you have regular education up there, even though there's budgets on each line, it's for the whole category. So you can overspend this one, underspend that one. And then if there's money left over at the end of the year, they can take 5% of that and move it down if they've overdrawn some of the other areas.
If you approve it.
So.
Yep. If you're able to prove it.
And the key is knowing that as it's going on. Because like you said, we can shuffle things around, absolutely, but wouldn't it be nice to know that instead of finding out or never finding out way down the road? That's kind of, that the whole data thing.
When you see the budget, it's not, those numbers are not locked in. It's per the category.
Oh, yeah.
For that.
Oh,
Right, but as part of the overseeing.
We're doing the best we can
absolutely.
with what we have as we're making that budget, but there are always things that are going to be changed. We don't live in a static world, right? Yeah.
One thing we've had success with is the reports that come out looking at the variance. They would post them an hour or two before the meeting, and nobody has a chance to look at it. It's like being treated like a mushroom, and the superintendent dictates the discussion and talks about the variance. We've had it posted now a day or two beforehand, discussing that board members are working people, they need to be able to review it, so at the meeting they can be productive and ask the question. It significantly helped our financial conversations.
Love it.
For the public as well as for the board members.
And you have a finance committee, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest things when we think about this stuff. Can anybody tell me the 3 committees that should be working hand to hand when it comes to the budget cycle?
Finance,
Facilities.
Finance, facilities, personnel.
Okay.
Board, somewhere here.
All right, the ones I would say, and those are all important. When I was the chair of the building committee, I always brought my stuff in. I would say it's your finance, your audit, and your budget committee. Right? Because when you think about,
I mean, I've never seen a school board have those three distinct at all. That all falls under finance in every board.
okay, that's how your board's set up. Now, who set? Board setup's a whole nother workshop too, but when you think about it, that's something that you all have approved. You said, okay, we're gonna have the same people that are responsible for finance, that are responsible for audit, that are responsible for budget, right? And so they should be bringing all that information to you. When we think about the audit, and we talked about those corrective actions, how are we coming along with those plans, what have you, oftentimes it's better, and the suggestion when you think about best demonstrated practice, to have those be separate. So that depending on how many people you have, I know some boards are really small, so there's like 5. Some boards are bigger, you might have 14, 16 people, what have you. But if you have the opportunity to do that, or at least have somebody have a little bit of separation with some of those, so that you get a little bit of different perspective from those, and as they kind of work together in that cycle, to be able to bring those learnings in. Yeah.
What were those 3 again?
Finance, audit, and budget. And that also saves people time too, because he's got a background when it comes to auditing and stuff like that, so I'd love to have him on the audit committee. Me, maybe on the finance committee. My real passion is on the curriculum or education committee, because I like doing that stuff. And then when you think about the budget committee, someone that's involved in all those conversations as the year goes along, so they can really understand it. And hopefully, they're the person that can take the language that's being used and break it down so it's really simple. And we'll talk about that with our public transparency plan here in a moment. All right, so oversight calendar. So this is really important. So when you think about an oversight calendar, integrating your reporting guide, what do you think a purpose of having an oversight calendar would be? Exactly right. Stay on track, right? And so you can measure against it. So you want to structure year-round oversight. So when you think about your current budget, if you got it passed in June, congratulations. When do you think you'd want to get your first monthly reports?
Financial report, you said?
Yeah, first look.
Next month, in July.
I like it. I like it. Because when you think about it, a lot of people think after school starts, But when you think about that prep happening within school, it's a really good idea to understand, okay, are we spending the money we thought we were going to spend to get ready for school? Right? July.
School boards don't even meet in July, no.
Yes, he did.
Some do.
Ours don't.
And that's a decision from a school board.
That's because you budgeted past.
So the purpose of the calendar, structure year-round oversight, fulfill statutory duties, support the budgeting and compliance, promote public transparency, right? Having this oversight calendar, people know what they can expect, when they can expect it. And so when you think about it, month and quarter, we'll go through. July and August, the start of the fiscal year, so you want to be looking at your prior year closeout. Audit preparation, you closed out your books, so you pretty much want to start getting ready for your audit. Verify your DOE submissions that you may have done. Core reports, your MEFS year-end summary, your fund balance report, any type of grant carryover list. And then when you think about reviewing your prior year financials, when you think about the oversight action, so that you're looking at all these, so you're starting to prepare not only wrapping up the year before, but really looking at what's coming up the next year, right? So you're putting yourself in a really good position to understand what's happening there. When you think about September through October, audit completion and corrective actions, right? You want to be having this down. It should be up into the state. I think it's December 1st. They might have changed that a little bit since I was there, but it was in December that we were supposed to have it up there. We didn't always hit that number. So you have your draft audit, corrective action plan if it's needed. So as Bob said earlier, if there was something that happened, whether it's handling cash or following this or that or what have you, if there was something, come up, let's see what we're going to do to correct that. Review your audit findings, approve your final CFA, monitor implementation of those corrective actions. November, December, you're going to have an ongoing budget monitoring, liquidity review, looking at your expenditures, revenues versus expenditures, budget versus actual cash flows, and then you can see where you're really just trying to identify those spending trends, variances. You're going to be approving you want to make sure that all the you're approving the warrants that are going through, adjust the encumbrances or transfers. So this is really just an opportunity. You think about it, you're pretty much halfway through the year in December, and you're really trying to figure out where are we at this point in time. When you think about all the different financial levers that are out there, how are we doing those? So like you mentioned earlier, encumbrances. So we know how much we're paying our teachers. We know what we have that's committed that is showing in our account, but we really don't have it because it's committed, right? It's something that's already out there. And then also understanding what your cash position is, right? So when you think about your unassigned fund balance, where is it sitting? Right? And so really being understand, so if something were to happen, right? If there were something that really happened that was catastrophic or something that was really big that happened in our school district, are we in a position to be able to go ahead and handle that, right? And to understand where those positions are. Then you get into January, February, start your budget development. Once again, you're looking at your fund balance projection. So this is where you're starting to look at, okay, what are we going to be above or below, right? And then to the point before, Leo, not necessarily that I want to spend every dollar I can. I'm an altruist, by the way. So I'd like to give every kid everything they ever need. My cousin over here is much better at going, I don't really think they need those fluffy cushions so they can read nice. How about we put those on the back burner, Jason? We'll do this, right? But that's a great opportunity with the school board to be able to have that dialogue, to have that conversation, to kind of debate back and forth. What's really super important, and oftentimes my wants, when it comes back down to the fact that we're really just looking at needs, right? Let's take care of our needs first, then we can start putting some of that additional stuff on there. Because if you take care of your needs, think about it. And I don't know an exact number, the amount of money we spend in high school on remediation for things that people didn't get K through 8. Right? Imagine if we didn't have to do that and we're able to funnel a percentage of that money into pre-K, K, 1, 2, 3, and then that cycle just improves itself, right? It's like, I don't know about the rest of you, but every time I try to get in shape, it seems to be a little bit harder because my starting point's a little further away from where it was the first time, right? And as you think about this kind of cycle that we have, we've been on a downward trend. We got to level it out first before we can start coming up this way, right? Make sense? Then you're going to go through March through April. And this is where you have those fun conversations in the grocery store with your constituents that are just so happy with everything that's going on in your school district. And then you get May through June. And right here, transparency wrap-up. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in our community piece. But really making sure that we do the things that we needed to do this year to keep our public engaged and involved so that they really understood what's been happening all year. Have we given them the resources they need so they understand what we're doing? Or if we've been working in a silo where all of a sudden, like, we just come out in June and, oh, wow, here's your $6 million increase on your budget. Please go vote, right? Because if you turn it down, we're going to pick the warmest day in August when everybody's at camp, and we'll just, we'll have the 300 people that, need this budget to get paid in September, supposedly. They'll come and vote for it, and then we'll kind of move on, and then we'll go, right? This will allow you to really take control of that. So when you do come out in June, wouldn't it be great? And we used to use this trick all the time in the corporate one. And I think it could work in public education too. We'd be coming up for a big request, and we've done our little pilot, we've done whatever, so we can show the return on our ROI, return on investment. We can show the value proposition, all that stuff. I'd work the phones for 3 days before that meeting ever came up, right? So then when we came to the budget referendum, instead of people like, what in the world's going on there? And I don't know if you all do it in the gymnasium. I think we still do it in the gymnasium. And then, if you had people come up and go, hey, it's either quiet, because they all understand it, or when someone asks a question, the person next to them goes, oh, I can explain that to you. Right? Wouldn't it be great to have friendly people out there that were supporting it already because they knew what was going on? Right? Make your life that much easier, and then they appreciate all the work that you did to make it that way, as opposed to, right, all of a sudden your neighbor thinks that, I don't know about you all, but I became a different Jason Sharp when I walked into school and went to a school board meeting, because my neighbors treated me a lot different than when I was mowing my lawn and we're talking on Sunday, right? I'm like, I'm still a human. I'm still a dad, right? I'm still a husband trying to make it through life like the rest of you, right? Trying to do the best I can. But I've always found if we can show our work and be proud of that, right? And be able to show that to the folks that are out there. Core reports that you're going to be looking at. Once again, you can see some redundancy here, but really like a cash flow projection, right? Does everybody know what a cash flow projection is? Do you want to walk them through a cash flow projection?
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is we're trying to determine our inflows and our outflows over some certain period of time. So what can we expect that we're bringing in for money, right? And what's the source of it? And more importantly, what can we expect to be spending during that? Think of it like a budget, only instead of using payables and receivables, we're using actual cash that's moving around. So what we're trying to do is go from a cash standpoint, do we have any gaps where we may end up upside down? Because we don't want that, because if we're talking physical cash, something's not going to get paid. So that's kind of the way we want to look at that. How good are we in our physical cash position, and what can we anticipate things coming in and out, right? With any luck, everything's been moving, just as we thought, but do we have anything that's going to goof us up? That's all what we're really looking at.
Yeah. Think about looking at bank
Yes.
statements.
Are you going to talk about the EFM 46?
No.
Okay, I think you should. But it's how you can fund the local share. Most people have it funded through property values, and there's other ways it can be done.
Yep, we're more doing the budget cycle. That would be another workshop, like how you fund.
But
Yep,
most board members don't know about that.
right. There's a lot of stuff that
Most people think it's just through property valuations, and it's not. I'm trying to get it changed in our school to be per student. And that way, we're going to go, the other town's paying 32% while we're paying the rest of it, and we'll get out of 59%.
nice.
There's only 245 students difference.
Yeah,
So that the ball has just started rolling. We've collected the signatures, and now it's gone to the town council, and they're going to be putting together the team, and we're going
Nice.
to try to get that changed.
that's an example of a board taking control.
They don't even know about it.
Yeah.
EFM 46.
Yeah, but I think outside of the name of it, I think it's a great example of a board advocating for their local constituency, right? You saw an imbalance.
Right, they don't even know about it.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying we're not covering it. What I'm trying to do is give you credit, because for everybody else that may not know about that, that's a great example of a board advocating for the community. Actual funding, financial, like actual oversight stuff is a different workshop. So we probably won't get through this one today. But these have been great questions and what have you. But yeah, that's a whole nother area of public finance that would be a great 2-3 hour workshop to kind of go through. What are the different options?
It's important that we
Yeah.
advertise and do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Debt and capital planning, and then your federal state compliance. So you have all these, so you know that you feel really good about that. I know that when you think about, for me, I would sleep better at night knowing that all of those funds that are dedicated for certain activities actually got to those certain activities and I saw evidence of that, and I know exactly where they went, to make sure that that's something that's going well. You think about a lot of folks using, it's another workshop again, when you think about fund accounting, sometimes you just see these funds they're coming out of, but you don't actually see, like Bob said, a cash position. Like, you don't actually see the Skowhegan Savings Bank account, or the Bangor Savings Bank account, or Camden, whatever bank you guys, your school district user, or maybe they use multiple.
You're jumping.
Oh, got excited for a second.
Oh, yes.
A question, do you have any resources for the capital improvement fund? Any resources for new board members to learn about it? Our board has, like, our district is doing nothing.
You mean as setting up priorities and then,
Yes, I mean, just any resources to try and bring a board into an awareness of what they're supposed to be doing.
not off the top of my head, but we can put something together. Yep, absolutely.
Our card is, you should have our card. If you can just email us that, we can look at that for you. Yeah, our card's there and our contact information is on the packet that we were going to be going through. But if you just want to email us that question, we can look into that for you. Yeah, absolutely. And I jumped way ahead on my,
Yes.
I didn't realize this, putting it down. So,
There you go.
all right. So this category, we'll just go over this slide together. So when you think about it, the different type categories that you have when you think about the financial operations, liquidity, debt and capital planning, federal and state, and then your public transparency. So I'm not sure how many of you have this, but you build trust through reporting. Results matter. People really care about their money. So let me ask you, if I went to your website today, would anybody there have like a financial dashboard that the community would be able to look at and understand?
It's just the budget information.
Okay. Yep. Annual financial report, board packet summary, stuff like that, posting these online. Obviously nothing to have an executive session or what have you, but everything you do as a board member that's outside of executive session is public, unless, of course, communication with your personal email isn't. But when you really think about it, what are, being able to give that to the public, right? And really control the narrative that way and let them be able to understand it, but make it easy to make it easy for them to understand. One of the things I always heard about public finance is really complicated. I find it more tedious than complicated as you're filling out the different cells and stuff to go into the formula. When you think about a finance committee routine, whether you have a separate one or it's a couple different members, or if you're finance and budget and everybody all in together, a couple good routines are having your monthly meetings, reviewing all of this information, right? Every board member, someone said it earlier, have jobs, have lives. You're not dedicating 20 hours a day to a board member, being a board member, but can your finance committee provide you with some of this information that allows you the insight and to be able to ask questions without you having to go through all the minutia that may happen in a finance committee meeting. Validate and transfer the budget amendments. So when you think about that, like if you're a little bit low and you want to transfer some, and you're like, hey, we want to take this and put it over here, really understanding and having that dialogue, and be able to explain it back to the board, which would also be the community. Discuss any type of grant or debt activity that might have happened. And then on a quarterly basis, you want to make sure you're examining your budget actuals, the trends, the fund balance, review debt service, capital projects and schedules, and then preparing reports for the full board. So as a full board, it's always a great idea to ask your finance committee or those members that are involved in this, whether they're signing the warrants or whatever, to really talk about them and what form do you want this information to come to you so it's understandable, right? So that you can kind of look at it and say, hey, this is how we do it. My mom, I won't tell you how old she is, but she still keeps a paper register of every single expense that she has. And if you were to then take her online and say, well, here's your account overview, it's not really going to make sense to her, right? But if you show her, but if you click this button, it's going to look just like the register you're keeping by hand. Now, all of a sudden, you've hit her where she meets you. You can meet her where she is. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, there are no great accounting systems out there for school finance. The one that there was, they're discontinuing it, and the options are absolutely horrible, and it's hard to get good reports, accurate reports. With the system that we went with, your encumbrances are all messed up. So I don't know what we're gonna do for school finance, because there's nothing out there.
Yeah, once again.
Tyler products stink. It's.
No, absolutely. We absolutely understand that.
I don't know what we're gonna do.
There is a solution, but once again, that's school finance. So when you think about how you do it, there are solutions to that. out there in the environment, right? So one thing I've heard a lot from administrators is how difficult these types of things are, right?
It is.
Well, a lot of it comes down to the user.
No.
No.
Not on the product that we just started.
No, and we'll get into that. It's another workshop.
They're all quitting, that's how bad it is.
No, that's all right. Well, that means that would tell me the board made a bad decision, right? So, but finance, that whole finance software, all that stuff.
Oh, it's bad.
Another topic for another day, as we go through that. Transparency deliverables. So, community and taxpayers, the annual financial report, a dashboard that summarizes all of your revenue, expenditures, your grants, federal, any type of audit highlights that are out there. You'd want your community to know that, right? If you have a cash management issue in your district, that should be something that everybody should know. The audit is available publicly if they walk into the district office, but we would want to make sure they knew what those highlights were. Hopefully, your audit went really well because everything's going really well, and you can come out and say, I got a clean bill of health.
I just got the last 10 years of audits from DOE, and they emailed them to me in minutes.
Yep.
So that's another option that they have.
Yeah, and to be able to just put those out for the public, right? Make it available, something that you should be proud of. Board members, your monthly packets, quarterly financial summaries, those should come monthly and quarterly. DOE, the uploads that are going through there, one, understanding what uploads go through, right? What are we giving the Maine Department of Education for information, right? And then the next step would be making sure that that's all accurate. And then when you think about some of the key takeaways from here, integrating all of this, right, can help you maintain continuous oversight across all 12 months of the year, right? I don't know about the rest of you, but one of the things that I don't like a lot, unless it's a surprise birthday party, are surprises, right? And so a lot of times when those surprises come up, we're just not in a position. Like, I love the best administrative practice about putting the information on a couple days before the meeting. So now all of a sudden you're not walking in and finding out something while you're sitting in front of the public, right? You have a chance to kind of look at it, digest it, maybe ask another board member a question. And then when you think about continuous monitoring equals structured calendar equals an informed governance and public trust. The more people think that we have control, right? Perception is everything. So the more people think that we have control of it, right? The more trust they're going to have in you and the decision-making skills that you have, but they're also going to be, it's going to be easier conversations for you because you're going to know the answers, right? So when you go in there and they ask you something about, oh, I looked at your, not that you have one, but if you had a financial dashboard or something, hey, I looked on there and I noticed after your last meeting it got updated so that it looks like we're reducing this and this has gone over here. Oh, yeah. Well, the recording's online if you want to watch the meeting, but let me give you the 2-minute high-level review of what we talked about.
And that's coming from data. That's coming from actual data that's moving in and out. You're not making it up. You're not creating a story. You're just letting that data turn into information and tell the story. And the more they know up front, it's going to be a lot harder to argue because what they're looking for is, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. But then they can ask informed questions. Because if they don't know any of the data, or more importantly, as you as a school board member don't understand what that data is, it makes it very hard to make a decision, to understand whether I'm doing things right or wrong, or I just don't know. And again, everybody's in it for the same reason, is to accelerate the teaching and learning environment for the kids. I mean, that's what the whole thing's about. So understanding that data that's there, it may not be at your fingertips yet, but it's available, and just figuring out how to get that so you can ask the right questions. I think just calms a lot of conversations down.
Exactly right. And then also knowing what data isn't available so that you can actually fill that in, if that makes sense. All right, so customizing your calendar, you want to add district-specific reports so people know when they're coming out, and just categorizing all these in here. We're just giving you a couple examples here. Who are the owners' due dates? So like we talked about, finance, audit, budget, facilities, the education committee, like what things are coming up. So you can have it just going along throughout the year. Always a good idea to put summaries first and then visuals, right? That way people can get a high-level look at what's happening. Sometimes you show them 5 trees. They're not going to realize there's actually a forest there. Show them that first, show them the summary, then show them some of the visuals that will go into the meaty part of it, making sure that we have a compliance timeline so people really understand. One of the things that help get some of these things done is people all understand what's supposed to happen when. If it doesn't happen, then it's just not you as a lonely school board member saying, hey, weren't we supposed to have this happen? Now all of a sudden you might have 30 or 40 people from community go, wait a minute, why didn't this update? Right? And that's just something that people are going to start looking forward to. And then when you think about your DOE uploads, one, making sure, when I was on the DOE site the other day, it was kind of interesting because there was one report that I won't name, but I was looking at them and some of them just haven't been submitted yet. Right? So one of the things we all think about the Department of Education is they're also the gatekeeper and what have you. Yeah, they check off that you uploaded it. When you think of the capacity of the DOE, they're not bumping it up against anything. Right? So when you think about that accuracy part of what you're putting up there, when you're putting up there and what have you. And as some of you said about the accreditation, right? Superintendent might tell you, we don't have to submit that anyway. I mean, nobody's doing it. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Well, it may matter, right? And so actually understanding what those things are that you're supposed to be submitting to the DOE would be very helpful. So we do want to make sure, I see some foods coming in, so I want to make sure that we don't hold you up. I know we have a hard stop at 12:30, but we'll try to get done a little bit earlier. Question?
Yes, I was wondering if you could talk to the fund balance and what really legally are the constraints. So my understanding is that the district, when the voters approve of this at the annual budget meeting for our structure anyway, the district can move around 5%. I'm wondering if that's between cost centers, and municipally I have a bit of a different understanding of it. My husband's a selectman, so I'm trying to compare based on the annual budget, annual town meeting that we have. And if there's extra money left over, the voters have to reappropriate that at the end of the year, again, to the best of my understanding of things. It does not seem like the district is doing that. It seems like that's called their carryover, and I know we talked about this in the beginning, but I think that's one area that we probably need to understand a little bit more, like what legally is allotted in this carryover. And again, the question that the legislature was going to maybe raise that amount that we could keep, but I guess they didn't. So I have all kinds of questions surrounding that, but can you just give us a baseline of what that looks like and legally, and then our right and left lateral limits on that? I don't really understand this very well.
Would love to, but I'm not an attorney and neither is he. So we have our own, like we understand what we read when you're talking about Maine statutes. And when you look at it, from my experience so far, it's districts handle it the way they can. So if nobody challenges them legally. But that best question would be for an attorney that would be able to go through. Because I know, and the only reason I say that is because I've heard from one district what they can legally do, and another district will tell you what they legally can do, and it's because of whatever their legal counsel's given them. But when you think about usually the administration's talking to the legal counsel, so the legal counsel is giving advice in the way in which it was worded. Does that make sense?
Can you define for us what fund balance is at like the baseline understanding so that we as board members understand what that means? And again,
Basic fund account.
Yeah. Fund balance, all that means is all the money that came in versus all the money that came out, what's left over. The thing that you need to understand, though, is some of that money that came in would be designated specifically for grants, and you just can't spend it on anything. It follows what it was designated for. So you should see it broken out at least 2 spots. Your undesignated means that was just the general money that came in versus what you spent, so that is sitting there. Totally different than the designated, which was part of a grant or a restricted donation. So that would be a temporary restricted fund balance for the original purpose. It's goofy. Fund accounting is goofy.
Yeah, and so what you didn't happen, like on the Maine DOE, you'll see there's a handbook that there's all the different codes. So there's a 5-digit, there's a 5 number, there's 4 digits in each one of them. And that tells you which fund each one's coming from. So you have like the fund, the operation, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so that's how they're all listed out. So they'll all roll up into the big, categories that you see on your warrants. And so with each one of those going through, that's where that 5% comes in. But it gets really cloudy depending on who's asking the question and who's giving the advice. Yeah, so really when you want to think about fund balance, think about this. Like the way I usually explain it to people is like if I look at my regular budget, I have a car, I got a house, there's certain things that are designated, right? But then at the end of the month, hopefully I have some that isn't, like if you roll it over, and you may say, I'm going to designate that to my vacation fund. I may designate that to a college fund. I might designate this, or I might just put it in my slush fund, right? So when you think about some of those votes that you'd have, you may have conversations at your school board, say, hey, we're going to have a surplus in facilities and maintenance because oil was free this year. So we got $800,000. That's more than 5%. So as a board, we need to go ahead and vote on this piece. When it rolls into unassigned fund balance, which I think the beginning of your question is, that's where it's like the legal advice comes in. Because depending on, it's just better to come from an attorney. And that's why I say oftentimes, if I'm a board chair, right? One of the mistakes I made when I was on the school board is I never felt real comfortable reaching out or having our chair be, hey, can you bring our attorney in from XYZ and have a conversation with us as a board about this topic? We always went through the superintendent. And so then the superintendent would come, and oftentimes we wouldn't see the attorney. We'd get the summary of what the attorney said, but we were never really sure what was the actual conversation, right? And it wasn't until later in my board time that I actually got into it. We had an issue, and I was like, okay, wait a minute. I want him coming to the finance committee meeting. I want to ask him the questions. And it was interesting to see that, but we had an actual attorney who really knew what he was talking about that could then guide us, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think what she's talking about is general fund balance.
Yep.
And this, they just changed it to 9% they can have left of,
You understand? Yep, unsigned fund balance, yeah.
yeah. And then, I think over that, don't they have to give that back to the taxpayers, but that 9%, they can designate it for this, that, and every other thing.
Well, that's why we're saying legal advice, because like what you just said is different than what another town will say. So that's why I'm saying attorney's a great person to ask that question.
And then the 5% is, that I was talking about earlier, is for the 11 cost centers. If you have, like, say, 1 million in regular education, and you overdrew transportation, and you can move 5% of that 1 million into another, or break it up over the other cost
If the board approves, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is the average amount of time a finance committee should be spending each month regarding all the stuff that you just covered?
Yeah, I would say a well-running finance committee, probably monthly. As you're getting some of this.
The amount of time in the meeting?
Oh, time in the meeting? I would probably say you're probably going to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours.
That's what I thought.
Yep. And then as you're getting some of this stuff going, you may have to, I know when I was the chair of the finance committee, I had to start doing 2 meetings a month because we needed to really get some stuff done. But it depends on the board. But yeah, probably to go through and be able to answer your question. Now, once you get really going and you get into these rhythms and information more accessible, if you're able to get the information 2-3 days ahead of your meeting, and you can come in and it's kind of like flipping the classroom. So now I'm coming in knowledgeable and I have a couple questions I want to ask. Then your meetings get shorter from that perspective once you get the routines going. Yep.
Thank you.
There's a question over here. Yeah.
This was a question, but a couple of responses. I am an attorney. And 20A MRS section, I have written it down here, 15689B is the guidance which has changed over the last 2 years in terms of what the unassigned fund balance can be. It used to be 9% for fiscal year 2026. It's dropped down to 5%. And as you just mentioned, Bob, where you need to distinguish, to answer your question, between assigned and unassigned. This is only talking about unassigned in terms of a limit. In terms of assigned, if you have generated for that, it's been assigned to a category, that you're allowed to carry forward. It's the unassigned that's capped at 5%. The place you're going to find on the audit report, correct me if I'm wrong about this, is on your statement of net position.
Correct.
So everything should be,
Correct.
so that's like you don't have a balance sheet for a school department or a town. You have a statement of net position. So that is going to give you your carry forward, and you should be able to see that at the town level primarily, unless your school board breaks it out. Most of it's all going to roll up into the town. So you're going to be wanting to look at that. I hope that's a little bit helpful. I can certainly talk to you later.
Yeah, so grab your
Attorney.
former budgets that have already been issued, because they will break that down. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Since this is being recorded, will we be able to see it again, like at this fixmainschools.com or on YouTube?
Yeah, Heidi's going to be uploading. We're going to get her the video, and then she's going to put it on the member website, right? The recording? The recording, we're going to house that on.
We're gonna have it on the website, but it will be probably we'll have to give you a login. It's not gonna be open to anybody, just people that want to.
Because some of the charges.
Okay, yep. Yep. No, I can appreciate that. Now that we've been in the room, we can alter that next time.
I don't want to come over as a plant, come off as a plant here, but my first reaction is, this is awesome presentation. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious by all the feedback and whatnot. But you mentioned it, I've been there, a party of one with 8 other people, 10 other people. It's really hard to make this. So my question is the ultimate, my ultimate goal would be to get you two in front of the council or in front of the school board. Is that part of your is that gonna be the demo? Are we gonna see a demo that's gonna
The demo's a custom solution we're developing.
Because I think, you know, it's perfect, unfortunately, it's perfectly acceptable to be on a board, and when it comes to budget, say, I don't like numbers.
Yeah.
And that's totally acceptable, and it's unfortunate, but that's the case. And now that said, you know, education's a key piece, so, you know, some members might say, I don't know education. But I do think, like, figuring out, the reporting is the first piece.
Yep.
Because it's gonna spur all of these questions once you establish that this is what we're gonna report. Hopefully, we can figure out how do we get there, and it's by leveraging people like you in front of the board, is my opinion.
Yeah, we are an advisory firm, and what we're going to demo you you're going to be like, oh wait a minute, but it's just the beginning, right? As far as trying to empower all of you. And sometimes I know when I did a budget analysis for a district, they're going through negotiation stuff and whatever, and they're just having a really tough time. When I came in and did my presentation, and then some people got really upset, and I told them, don't get upset, right? I'm trying to empower you to be able to ask some of these questions. Well, what happened was, once the negotiating team, and not to get into negotiations, but once they had the actual data, they were much more effective in their conversations trying to negotiate than they were when they were just taking whatever was given to them, right? And I learned that when I was on the board. The first time I went through teacher negotiations, I didn't really know how to go. I didn't really have all the information, all that good stuff, and it was dragged out, went on forever. Well, the second time around, my negotiating partner and I said, okay, let's come prepared. And it was done in 3 sessions, right? It was the staff, you know, support staff, whatever. And it was because I learned, oh, wait a minute, having data is super powerful. Shame on me the first time, I didn't know. But the second time, we came, right? And that's one of those things. So we'll get to the demo now. So public transparency, I'm just gonna go through this because it leads right into the demo part. Why transparency matters, it builds trust. It's required by law, FOA, right? We all go through that education. Referendum, taxpayers, you're dealing with public finance, you're dealing with the public, right? Having them be on your side proves your decision making. Some of the engagement tools that will be available. You have your public gatherings, you have your online dashboards that if you don't have one, they're not super difficult to build. Facts and glossaries, social media updates. I'll just give you an example on this one. I'm not a social media guy, but we were able to double our audience at our soccer games this year just by publicizing where the games were and tagging some people and saying, hey, come watch us play, right? Heck, my cousin even came to a few games. Best practices, plain language, right? Making it simple, using visuals and charts, multi-channel, website, email, mail, social media. And I know a lot of people say, oh, we put it on a social website. One of the funniest things I ever saw a board do was they put out a survey online asking people if they had online access. Guess what? 100% of the people did. 100% of the people that answered had online access. Wonder why, right? But it's just one of those things, right? I wonder if they mailed it, if they might have got a different response. So overcoming some of the challenges. Complexity, making it simple. Apathy tells stories. The most successful stories are student stories, right? Stories of success that we've had with our students and how we did that. And it's not necessarily that we did it for cheap. Maybe we spent a bunch of money on it. Maybe we didn't spend a bunch of money on it, right? I mean, there's just some examples where, hey, if you get a teacher that's really making it happen, how can we get her to help, you know, with somebody else? Is there some sort of developmental or something like that that we can do? Misinformation, fact check, and this isn't go on your local community Facebook page and rebut everything that someone says. This is, okay, let me make sure I have my facts so that I'm not part of the misinformation machine unknowingly, just because I don't know. And so we'll skip this activity, but it's just something to think about as you go home and when you're talking to the board members and stuff. Just kind of think about what tools do you have, what tools don't you have. When you think about it, I love it and I don't love it sometimes, but I can find out anything about my New York Giants, right? I can find out anything that's going on about my New York Giants. My school district is a little bit tougher, right, to find out what's happening, and I'm a vested interest person. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into, let me end this show, and I'm going to show you something that we are currently in the process of developing. Okay. So we recognize there was a need. So through conversations with some of the people that are here, some of the things that you don't have at your disposal are tools in which you can actually take information and put it into a usable format, right? So this tool right here that we're developing, like I said, I worked in software for a little while, and I love puzzles. So what we did is we started working on this, I don't know, a month and a half ago. And as you can see, it looks kind of nice, right? So we want to be appealing. But what it does, it gives you an opportunity to learn your business. One of the things I learned early in my career was knowing your business, right? How do I know my business? One of the best ways was, I remember an executive of mine, and I wasn't even in reporting, said use Excel every day, right? Every single day, know how to use it, know how to drive your own data, so you can tell if other data is actually really helping you out. So when you look at it, what's going to happen is with this is the ED 279 in order. Doesn't have every single piece, but it has all those lines that make up the totals, right? And so what ends up happening is you would go through, you just pull up your ED 279, and you just go ahead and enter it, right? So you get the idea on that one. Now, and once again, I'm not part of the school district, we use it as a demo, so we call this demo District 1, but this is real numbers. So then you'd put in your actual budget. So here, most people can get the big categories, right? So you think about your regular instruction, special education, career and technical, and so we put that in. And so what this is going to do is give you what your actual budget was for that year. So this year we're using 24-25, right? Now, as you go through that, then you come in here. And what it's going to do, we mentioned AI earlier. What it does, takes this and just compares them, right? So you can clearly see your overs and unders, right? Where are you spending more, where are you spending less? Now, this isn't an indictment. This isn't a judgment. This is just give it nice and clear right in front of you. Where are we different, right? And what should we be seeing there? Then you're going to get a dashboard. And so this comes out, and it just kind of highlights it when we talk about visuals. I won't pick on my mom again, but she would be able to tell you after looking at this visual where we spend most of our money, right? And she may ask a few questions or what have you. Love her to death. And then you have an opportunity, once the information's in here, to say, okay, what if I want to create my own budget, right? What if I think we spend too much in this, and I want to spend a little bit more in here, right? So this allows you to move these around and actually create a different budget for yourself. Then we go into staffing. So this is what I talked about with those nuances when it comes to the staffing. Someone enters this information into the NEO system. So I go in, and I've actually got these almost exactly in order. I forgot curriculum coordinator, so they're near the bottom. But really, if you go through it, if you go into the dashboard, you go into the staffing dashboard, and you pick your district, right? And then you just go by role. You'll just follow along here, alphabetical order, and you just type in the number, and you type in the average salary that you see. Now you go into your actual staffing. This is where a little bit of the data magic comes from. Here I had to take their actual budget, which I had broken down into more line items, and take those and kind of figure using either average salaries or what have you to kind of back into their staffing numbers. So this isn't going to be 100% what you get from this actual district, but since it wasn't publicly available, I had to do the best I could just for illustrative purposes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put in performance data. Now, all we have available to us as just a public that I can find, we have our state stuff. So I said, I want to see a trend. Bless you. It doesn't matter to me if you had one bad day, right? I tell my daughters that all the time. Okay, you get a bad grade, had a bad day, right? We all have bad days, right? But if you're having a bad 3 years, or as some districts, a bad 5 years, right? We want to see those trends. We want to see where you're trending. And so we look at our English, we look at our math.
And that could be broken down into the actual what's going on in the school.
Oh, yeah.
Versus state.
This is that's one of my dreams, right? Because if you're using PowerSchool, whatever, access to actual data. I come from the banking industry, he comes from accounting. We all understand compliance, non-disclosure agreements, all that good stuff, whatever, But you could actually, the next step for this one is, and it's buildable, right? Add right onto here, you could put your actual data. Actual student data, so you'd know in October where you are. And as you go year over year, if you had last year's data, you could actually trend out to see if you've seen a degradation in your third grade on these tests. Am I seeing a continued degradation in third grade this year over last year, right? Do we have a real problem? And then it's going to, in the background, and you're going to get budget recommendations. And it's actually going to give you reasonings for it, right? So you'd actually sit there. So what I want to do is I'm going to go like this. Okay, here's my data, okay? So what happened is, before your very eyes, I just filled in all the information that's on that ED 279 that comes down around here, and you'll see the same numbers on the ED 279 I showed you earlier, and it comes down to the state here. You remember, here's the local contribution, here's the state contribution, and it just kind of puts it in front of you. Then what I did is I went in, I put in the actual budget, and you'll see the numbers that come in here, and it'll tell you here. So that's the actual budget from this district for that year. Then you can see the comparison, and I'll ask you on the comparison, anything jump out to anybody?
So this is actual against EPS contribution?
Yep, actual budget versus the allocation from the ED 279.
But you've included additional local funds, correct?
Yep, this is their actual budget.
Yep.
But does anything kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, career and technical.
Yeah, isn't that something? So when we think about your budget being your moral document, I'm thinking this district isn't a big believer in career and technical education.
I don't think anybody has budgets for that anymore, the state pays it.
Hey?
Ours is zero.
But even if the state pays it, when you want it there? So, some do include it when you look at the budgets and stuff like that. And it kind of comes down to like debt service. So that's the one that usually sticks out when people look at this first. There's a big pink line across. And what this is we have it so it should match. And the only reason we say it should match is because when you think about the debt in there. But there are nuances to this. And as I researched it more and more, and I couldn't really put an algorithm or a formula back here to say if it's this district, then calculate it this way, if it's this district. But really what it is some districts don't put all their debt up onto the ED 279 form. They might just put their state subsidized. Some people do. Some districts you go in there, you see 5, 6, 7 different lines of debt. Some you'll see one, some you don't see any, right? It all depends on the district and how they're handling this information. But that's your basic comparison. And then when you look at the Maine DOE staffing, once again, I just went through right here. And then you look at the actual staffing. And this is how I backed into it. So I just went down through each one of these. And so this isn't 100% of all the roles that you might have out there, but it's pretty darn close. And then as you move over, I put in the performance data, right? And then right at the top, after you put your performance data in, you're going to get a couple of messages, right? So if you notice on ELA, we're on a downward trend. Math, we're on a downward trend. We're behind the state. Science, we're on a downward trend. We're behind the state. Chronic absenteeism, I couldn't get for this district. Look at your 4-year graduation rate. We're behind on the state. And then we get a recommendation just off the get-go. The concerning trend on this one, the biggest trend going down is science, 4.6%. And when you think about it, look where science is going down from. Yeah. Right? 1 in 3 students are showing their proficiency. And this is just state-level proficiency, right? And that's going down year over year. So as you look at it, and you'll see that we have the trends as you go down here, and you get the 3 years worth of data for each one of the grades. And it's all in here, so you go like that. And then you can take a look at that, but then I don't know if any of you have ever said, I'm not a big fan of the budget I currently have. Well, what's the alternative, right? If I don't pass this budget, teachers aren't going to get paid. If I don't pass this budget, we're not going to have any ed techs. If I don't pass this budget, our school's going to close down. Like, all this stuff's going to happen if we don't pass this budget, right? But it's really hard when you only have a yes or a no, right? So what if we had a tool that would actually help you, right? So when it takes into consideration the performance, where you're spending money, and what we did is, in putting this formula together, we kind of looked out on where are people prioritizing that are doing well, where are some of the back end. So there's a lot of code in the back of this. But what it does is it really kind of shows you where you're at, what your proficiency gaps are. And we set this at net 0. Okay? Now, we could modify it and say, hey, allow a flexibility of 5% or whatever. But I wanted to be net 0, right? I want to come up with a purely alternative budget with the exact same money. So for this particular district, some of the recommendations are we're going to take $824,000 and we're going to move it from where it is today to someplace else. Now, we're going to give some of the reasoning here, and then as you go down through it, you're going to see recommendation budget adjustment, $309,000, regular instruction. This is a high priority because your math proficiency is below where it's supposed to be. We need some more math interventions, manipulatives, teacher training. What's the expected impact? There aren't too many people in the community that wouldn't look at that and go, that makes sense to me. Now, here's one that you're going to have to fight a little bit for. Oops, what'd I do? Come back here. Oh, where'd my thing go? Sorry about that. Here's one you're going to have to fight for a little bit more. We're going to reduce our system administration by $68,000.
Yeah.
Right? How are we going to do that? Now, not to get into the whole conversation here, but you talked about how your technology is not serving the needs of the administration. Well, we need better technology, or we need someone that knows how to use it better, or we need someone to come in, be okay, how do we integrate some of these technologies? Here is an integration of different technologies. How do we make these applications talk together so that we can get what we need out of this, right? Another one that you're going to run into a problem, that's school administration. That's pretty much an assistant principal. This district right here, their elementary schools are failing, but they have a principal and an assistant principal. Just their salaries alone are couple $100,000. Then you put in their benefits and everything like that, right? Plus they have some other stuff, right? Now it tells you, let's streamline our building level administrative functions to consider shared services where appropriate. This is one of the things that's always driven me kind of bonkers, right? Why aren't we sharing? Right? It's the power of numbers, right? So when you think about it, we have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 schools in our district, I think. Right? And when you think about it, they almost all operate separately. Right? Why is that? Why can't I have, they're only 10 minutes apart. 4 of them are right in a walking distance, right? Why do we have all these different roles in the same place, right? System administration, that's an administrative assistant, right? Or this district, actually, the superintendent's office has $73,000 in professional services. Anybody know? I don't know what those professional services are, but it'd be nice to understand what they are, and there's something that we could do for a little bit less. Someone pointed out the career and technical. Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a big fan of it. So we're not going to fully fund it to 8279, but we're going to put something here, right? And then when you look at facilities and maintenance, this one's going to be a big one you need to discuss, the same with transportation. So this is giving you recommendations, but it starts with a real good conversation starter, but you could go back to the other screen and move things around and say, hey, well, what if I did this? We already deferred maintenance last year. We're not going to defer it again this year, but maybe we can do something a little bit different here. Or, right, maybe there's an opportunity for us to save in another category that we know about because now we have a little bit more information.
I think you skipped the scenarios. What you were just talking about, I think.
Oh, yeah, I didn't let them move it back and forth.
Oh. Okay.
So this is the one, thank you, Bob. So this is the one I was talking about here. So you can actually say I want to take regular registration up a little bit, bring up my career and technical, and I can, oh yeah, that one's not working right. All right, take my student staff, move them up a little bit. System administration, maybe I move that down a little bit. School admin, I can move that down a little bit. And I always say I can move it that much just because of my background. Facilities and maintenance, I want to make sure we have this. Debt service, I can't change, right? And so then as you do that, it's going to change your budget. So now we're up to 22 million. Oop, I don't want to be that high. Well, it also allows you to save these. So with a unique login, you only see your own work. It allows you to save those. So what this is really designed to do is to give you power and really to understand, okay, what are some of the things that I want? Now, as Bob said, this is just the beginning. So when you think about it, getting out of this is designed really just to help you out with the budget. It's not a one-time and done either. So if you think you're going through your monthly meetings and you realize enrollment's changing, right? Or you're realizing that, hey, we have to do this, you'd be able to take this tool and you'd be able to say, oh, what if we do increase our staffing here? Like one of the things that was interesting and I know lunch is right here, so I don't want to keep you too long. One of the things that was interesting when I was going through here is you'll find that on the ED 279, which was just amazing to me, if you take a comparison on the staffing folks, right? You put in your actual staffing. One of the things that really stood out to me was ed techs. On the ED 279, this district lists 0, 1s, 2s, and 3s, and doesn't even have an ed tech librarian, right? But when you look at their budget, they budget $1.2 million for ed techs. Really? Yeah.
For 2 ed techs.
Wow, yeah. So this is one of those.
They only made like 15 to 20 an hour.
Yeah, that's what you think. So when you look at it, so it's just one of those tools. Like if I'm looking at this, one of my first questions was, where'd this go? Well, the interesting thing is if you look down here, and I'm not sure, because sometimes this is, and when I say user, like I'm not really sure what everybody's capacity is with technology and stuff like that. But if you look here, special education teachers on the ED 279, they have 17. But in the district, we could only find what would be about 8. Right? So not really trying to be judgmental against anybody, but I know a superintendent that I used to know, sometimes he put data into the ED 279 because he knew how the plan worked, which would allow him, because in certain areas you get more money from the state than you do in other areas. I'm not saying that's what happened here, right? But there's got to be a reason that this data was put in the way it was, and I'm pretty sure nobody from the district knows that happened, right? And so hopefully what this would be able to do is help you do this. The other thing that I wanted to show you real quick is we've also, I know this is like a 3-hour workshop. We're really passionate about this, right? So another thing that we've done, these workshops in person, what have you, one of the things that I've done a lot of in my past is enablement work. And so one of my dreams was to develop a academy for school board members, starting right here in the state of Maine, right? So the first one that we built out is called Financial Oversight for Maine School Boards. This workshop was brought to you from some of the lessons in here. You can see our smiling faces. But what it is, it's 10 chapters, 134 lessons, take you everything from the budget cycle, budget workshops, financial oversight, what's the audit process, internal controls. When you think about financial oversight as a school board member, one of the things I knew when I was a school board member, and I talk to school board members all the time, I get elected. I get welcomed by the superintendent in the chair, I sit down at my desk, and I sit through meeting after meeting after meeting, and for the first 6 to 12 months, I have no idea what's going on. And by the time I really figure out what's going on, right? So what we want to do is also, once again, be empowered. Once again, just like any educational course that you take, we do the best we can to be as accurate as possible. There's no legal advice in here. There's no accounting advice in here. It's just kind of outlining stuff. But hopefully something that if some of you are interested in it, just like with these workshops and empowering yourselves, if you finish the whole course, you get a certificate that shows that you have earned a certificate from the DSA Academy, so that you'd be able to show that. But also, this is something, as Bob mentioned earlier, if you're looking at your schools and you're like, hey, I just want to understand basic oversight, those can be peeled out, right? So hopefully, as you look at these two things, like I said, just really in development, but we know we went over a lot today in the workshop, and I know there's a lot of stuff that we can go over, in different workshops like this and stuff, but really, we think it's time now that your administration and everybody, nothing against them. I like the people that work in my administration, but they have all sorts of support. And what we want to try to do, and it's lucky to bump into, to meet Heidi through the Hagens and stuff, to say, hey, look, we want to make an impact here with Maine, and what can we do to help you all? So hopefully you've gotten something out of this workshop, if nothing else, meeting someone sitting next to you. But also hopefully, you also feel good about the fact that there are folks out there that are not affiliated with the Maine Department of Education, are not affiliated with the school board, that have some sort of expertise and are here to help out where we can. And Heidi, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome, give them a big hand.
I do have a question. Sure. When is that budget analysis tool going to be available, or is it already?
Yeah, it's probably going to be in production. I got one more test run. As you notice, one of my sliders didn't work. This version will be production ready this week.
And it will be on your website? Where will you find it?
Yeah, that would be, it won't necessarily be on our website. It's part of some of the offerings that we have to help support the folks, but we can talk to you after.
Awesome,
Thank you.
So my question for you, I was here yesterday with my team and we were talking about what we're doing next year.